Welcome to the animatronic tier list. I am excited to join the tier list video scene, and what better way to do that than with a 100% objective tier list of all of Springtrap's add-ons. We know that Springtrap's add-ons have developed something of a bad reputation over the last few months. And while it's true that some have called them bad, the majority of these options were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic, lawsuits pending. But we aren't above laughing at those mistakes. Ha, ha, ha. That's why we recreated many of these completely wrong takes, lies, that have been fed over the last several months into a highly edited video, in the hopes that we can finally move past these terrible thoughts and develop a new relationship with you, as well as the devs. Don't forget the merch, perfect for your birthdays. So sit back and enjoy a few laughs. We do, however, ask that you agree to a simple criteria before you watch. It's mostly just how I will be ranking the add-ons. It isn't at all based on viewer experiences thus far, or headaches associated with watching. Just keep watching the video to agree, then we can jump right into some harmless fun that can't harm you at all in any harmful way. Thank you for watching the animatronic add-on tier list. For context for this, the way this is going to work, we're not doing S to F. I have made it my stance very clear on S to F tier lists in most games outside of 1v1 fighting games. I hate them. I think they don't have enough nuance, and I think they kind of miss the point of a tier list most of the time. Because if this was S to F, I could just put Bonnie's guitar strings, restaurant menu, and Endo Cpu in S tier, and then everything else would just be an F tier, just by contrast. So I feel this XY tier list thing actually gets the point across better, because there are things that are strong but not reliable, and vice versa, and consistent but not good. And I think that's more appropriate to understand how good or bad an add-on actually is. So, I'm going to start with the four corners and the center one. In fact, the center one's going to be the one where we're going to start from, and that's Freddy's hat. If you enjoy orbitals or a masochist, then do I have the add-on for you. Jokes aside, as always, let's explain what the add-on does before I go any further. Freddy's hat makes your axe have 100% or double the weight. What this means in game is that your range is cut in half from about 14 to 16 meters to 7 to 8 meters, for the trade-off of the axe pretty much dropping like an anvil rather than like a brick. The thing this is the most effective for is orbitals, and the less talked about part being short loops. The faster and sooner drop speed makes dodging the axe from above much harder for survivors, as well as at loops as the speed is virtually unreactable. That being said, the hitbox is not changed, so for orbitals in particular, while they are made easier with Freddy's hat, they are still not reliable for so many reasons. The biggest being the survivors can hear you ready the axe and can simply walk away from the loop to completely avoid the axe drop.
Compromise. Just walk away.
But does this make the add-on bad, or worse, does it make it useless? In short, no, and also no. Springtrap really only has one useless add-on, and it's not hat.
I think I know what I have to do.
Is that a Faz shotgun?
The add-on has its purpose, and if you run it for a while, relearning how the axe works can lead to many hits that you can't get without it. And the fact that it's a playstyle change add-on, quote-unquote, on playstyle, is what makes it hard for not just me, but anyone to talk about it in a sense of how strong it actually is. The main argument is that other add-ons are just better, and that cutting your range in half is always a bad thing. As for the first point, this is true, but by that logic, every add-on that isn't Bonnie's guitar strings, restaurant menu, or Endo Cpu are also just bad, which I don't agree with at all. And to the second point, this is true, and I can't dispute that point. All I can say is that longer axe ranges often aren't worth it anyways, as you lose more distance in the long run. However, in a lot of situations, like the shack on Dead Sands, you can't shoot through the window from the outside to the other window when you're running Hat. But it makes up for that by making orbitals on the tall loops, once mastered, almost impossible for survivors to do anything against. The closest add-on I can think to compare them to are Vecna's iridescent add-ons, as the changes they do to Flight of the Damned and Mage Hand can be seen as downgrades in a lot of situations, but can also be seen as stronger in some other situations. It's really an add-on I can't tell you is good or bad. It comes down to you. All I can say is to try it out for more than 2 matches. Believe me, you're gonna hate it at first. Once you are used to it a bit more, see how, or if you really enjoy the change to how the axe functions. Ooh! Woo! Freddy's hat value! Yo! Fucking Freddy's hat, let's go! It might not be for you, but as I have seen some Springtrap players swear by it, and it's why I keep tripping over my words with this script, you just have to see if it is for you. This leads into the other issue it has for even those that enjoy it. You are always wasting an add-on slot to play Springtrap and denying yourself many combos of add-ons and even perks, which I suppose is a good segue into some of the combos it has. And Freddy's hat is in a weird spot as nothing really combos with it, at least add-on wise. Help One of that can help you learn its different arcs. Other than that, Poster is decent with it. You'll be getting closer hits, so naturally with Hat making it faster for you to catch up, I suppose. Foxy's hook is another, as the reduced range and faster drop makes just throwing the axe forward to get the haste without giving it to the survivors much easier. Apart from that, Menu and Bonnie's are never bad picks for obvious reasons. I mean, for perks, your answers are really just aura reading. That's your best bet, and probably the best one being Xantian Tactics and I'm All Ears, as both of these let you see the aura when the survivors are at the loop and see if they are even leaving or staying at the loop in general. So, with all that being said, should Freddy's Happy change in some way? In my honest opinion, its base effect is fine, and allows for a different way to play Springtrap, but it could be given a new effect to help give it more utility. A suggestion in a post I made was to allow it to break pallets as it's heavier, so that does make some sense to a degree and would allow for some interesting combos. Because it's different from how Endo Cpu works, it wouldn't take its spotlight, it would be 2 different ways to break pallets. Other than that, maybe due to its half range, you can give it Menu's effect, but increase to allow it to be thrown more often. Just some spitballs of ideas there. And listen, I understand why many people don't like this add-on. It has a lot bad going for it, but I would ask to not be as dismissive, as it does something that is not as common as you think with an add-on. It has an obvious use case. And that's the thing I keep saying about Springtrap's add-ons, is obvious use cases and builds that can be built around them. Freddy's Hat doesn't really have the build thing going on, but it does have an obvious use case. And it's, again, an add-on I love to see, an add-on that changes fundamentally how the power works, allowing people to use it in different ways that they want to, whether it's a detriment or not, whether it makes the power more situationally useful rather than it normally is. At the end of the day, like I've said in many videos, Springtrap is an M1 killer who happens to M2. Your axe is more of a utility tool than the actual main power. As much as I hate to tell people that, it really is how it is. There's a reason why most Springtrap players bring Menu every match. It's because the axe is not that reliable. It's not easy to hit sometimes, it's very easy to dodge, and at a lot of loops you can't really do much but go for a blind orbital that may or may not hit. But Freddy's Hat can help with that a little bit, as, again, it's the difference between a brick and an anvil. Freddy's Hat is... This is such a hard add-on to place. Like I've said so many times, it's a playstyle change. It's a side grade. It's not necessarily bad or good. It just depends. And it's more of a, do you like using it? Cool, here you go. I could move it towards unreliable, but I don't think it is. Once you get good with it, it's not really that unreliable. It's just different. And I think that's why it deserves that centerpiece part. I'm gonna do the most strong and most consistent, and people are gonna... It's not the one people think it's gonna be. I think it's Restaurant Menu. And the last one is Restaurant Menu. Restaurant menu reduces the time to retrieve an axe that is embedded in the environment, this needs to be noted, in the environment by 20%. This saves you about 2 seconds on getting the axe back. So basically, you miss the axe, and you can get it back in 2 more seconds. This add-on is so good. So good to the point to where I'm trying to not run it as often because I was relying on it a lot. But if you have an add-on that I would suggest to learn Springtrap with, instead of Help Wanted that, I would take Restaurant Menu. On top of that, if you're running something like Foxy's Hook or Chica's Bib or Endo Cpu, run this with it and you would be surprised how much it will come in handy. This means that you are not only punished for missing, or not as punished as much for missing, but in those situations where you want to miss because those add-ons benefit from you missing, you can get the axe back faster. If you do miss, or the survivor is too strong, or you want to go for more fancier hits, or just in general try to get better with the axe, this 20% is insanely good for that. To the point to where I honestly want it partially base kit. I think 10% could be added base kit and keep the add-on at 10%. I think it would be fine. Might be too much, who knows? With how strong Springtrap is, I really don't think it's necessarily going to be that bad. But again, very good learning tool, and in general, just a good add-on to kind of supplement any build. Even if you're going for an axe miss build or an axe hit build, it's a good add-on to run, and always rounds out his kit. I run it with Purple Guy Drawing, I run it with Poster, I run it with Coin, I even run it with my door builds with streamers and things like that, because again, missing your axe is very punishing with Springtrap at times if you're not doing it properly, and getting it back in an extra 2 seconds can mean the difference between a hit and a down and a hook and a lot of situations like that. I think Restaurant Menu is the strongest, most consistent add-on that Springtrap has. You're not, ironically, even though it's in the consistent side, it is not likely to hit every single one of your axes. In fact, sometimes, depending on what you're running, you don't even want to hit every single one of your axes. Even if you're not running anything, the Killer Instinct proc might be good at certain loops. And having the ability to get your axe back when you need it will always be a good thing. Again, like many Springtrap players will tell you, throw your axe whenever you can. Don't be holding it so you're not 110 all the time. And Restaurant Menu facilitates that a lot better. And while Bonnie's is strong, and we'll get to that later, I think Restaurant Menu is just more strong in more situations. There are matches you're going to have where you're not really able to use your doors for one reason or another, or where the gens are flying to a point to where Bonnie's guitar strings info doesn't really matter. However, there aren't going to be very many matches where you're bringing menu and it's not getting value. Unless you're landing every single one of your axes. And, yeah, if you're landing every single one of your axes, you're winning anyways. So, strong but unreliable. I think that's honestly Celebrate Poster. I think that's Celebrate Poster over in Strong but Unreliable. One of the most unique add-ons in the game. And while it was talked about a lot on the PTB, after its nerf coming to live, I have heard little about it and even seen some calling it just straight up bad. Today, I want to go over why I think it's good, and why it's honestly my favorite add-on, not only on Springtrap, but in the entire game. So, what does it do? After embedding the fire axe in a survivor, all players benefit from the following effects that are within 32 meters of that survivor. They are granted 12% haste, and they are granted an increased vault speed of 20%. Both of these effects last until the fire axe is removed or the person is downed. Pretty much when a survivor has an axe in them, anyone within 32 meters of them, that includes Springtrap and them, gets haste and a faster vault speed. So why is this good and what can it do for you? Well, the haste effect is the major thing that needs to be talked about. 12% is not nothing, and it makes hitting longer range axes more advantageous, letting you catch up faster. But even for close hits, allowing you to stay on the survivor and make grab is much more common. It should also be noted that the way the math works on Springtrap is you become 115 after you throw your axe. So technically you're getting 5% plus the 12% from Poster. So you're actually going faster than any time you would with Springtrap if you land the axe, which can be used in combination with certain perks like Play With Your Food to save its stacks. It also allows your lunge range to be extended as it's tied to your movement speed, being a pseudo coup de grace. Thank you, extra lunge. The vault speed also has its advantages, as while the survivor getting the extra vault speed too, there are not that many survivor perks that help them leverage this as much as there are for killers with things like Bamboozle, Superior Anatomy, and my personal favorite, Unbound, granting even more haste. It really is an add-on that can be addictive, as the feeling of landing the axe then getting a speed boost is unmatched. What I see many saying is its big issue is good survivors will leverage the haste and vault speed to make loops that they wouldn't have made before. But my counter to this is what I think is Celebrate Poster's true advantage, and that is in the macro of the game. I don't mean splitting pressure, but I mean the math of a chase. No matter what happens in that chase, it was 12% faster. It's hard to fully explain, but you both get the buff at the range, so it's really just shooting that chase in overdrive while the rest of the match is going at a normal speed. And this is something that is hard to show, and why I think many don't like running it. The results are kind of hidden, and many see its problems rather than its upsides. So a quick visualization of how Poster is really working. So this red circle here is where the axe is being embedded in the 32-meter radius it has around it. Everything happening in this circle is happening 12% faster. Everything outside of it is happening at normal speed. So again, basically everything here is going into overdrive, thus making this section and this part of the match go faster, which in essence is helping your macro game and making the game, again, faster within this area. There's also the argument of the vault speed being way more beneficial for the survivors, as they also keep the haste while they're doing the vault, and it can make some loops virtually impossible for you to play around. Again, my argument for this is that the loop still would have been harder to play around. You both get the vault speed, you get the extra lunge, and the survivor gets the extra vault, basically, as their benefit. There's things in here you can play around with it that I think make it worth running. What I will say is that you kind of do need a dedicated build. That is the one problem with this, and it's a problem with a lot of Springtrap's add-ons, to be fair, but I actually think this is an okay problem to have. I'd rather him have add-ons that he has to build into rather than add-ons that are completely useless, like Office Phone. But the other thing with this, again, is just the feeling. And a bit of control it gives you also in the chases should be also noted. While the 12% movement speed and the vault speed they have is very beneficial for both sides and can be leveraged depending on the loot, depending on the situation, you have control of when you're taking the axe out. Yes, they'll have it for a little bit, but the 12% speed is, again, both of you. The entire chase is going 12% faster, thus making it more beneficial for you as the killer. Again, you have this little bubble of space where the axe is embedded that is causing the entire chase to be 12% faster than the entirety of the rest of the match, which, again, is hard to visualize. I'm trying here as best I can, but that's basically what's happening here. The other concern I hear is body blocking, because a lot of people say they dropped the add-on once they not only lowered the movement speed from 20% to 12, but the fact that it hits everybody in the range. The reason this was done was to stop Springtrap from throwing the axe into one survivor and then sneaking up on another survivor and just doing it as a hit and run kind of playstyle. That's why it was done. Now, the one thing I will say with this is, yes, it can make body blocking a little annoying with it. However, if they are doing this and they're not doing gens, then you can run something like Force Penance to very easily punish this. On top of that, again, most of the time when you're doing this, you're doing it on the survivor you are currently chasing. If the other survivors want to use that haste effect for body blocking, they were going to do it anyways. You are all going at the increased speed. There is nothing in this that is benefiting only one of you, unless you bring perks to leverage it in a specific way. If you haven't tried this add-on, I highly recommend it, and it can combo with almost anything else. Here's a few suggestions. Foxy's Hook. Hit or miss, you get the move speed buff, and if it's a bad spot for the 12% haste, you can miss on purpose just to get the buff from Foxy's Hook. Purple Guy Drawing. Many survivors will try to pull the axe out more often than they normally would when they're hit with Poster, making the aura reveal removal way more common. Paper Plate. This basically gives you 1 extra second for them to pull the axe out. Again, if you're going for grabs or have a build around it or really just like the grabs, that 1 second of leeway can be the difference. Faz Coin. Hiding your red stain while having the haste can make you unpredictable at loops and lead to faster downs on top of its longer lunge. Then there's the perk combos. As mentioned, any vault perks, but Unbound and Superior Anatomy are a massive boost to help you catch up at insane speeds. Then there's Play With Your Food, that, as mentioned, you will not lose stacks on grabs and can be used to keep your speed even faster throughout the match. Give me that. Batteries included is also great, as it can let you maintain and even be faster speeds in these chases and catch people off guard. Something that should be noted is that Overcome is a perk that can counter this add-on in a very strong way, as the extra speed means the survivors have more time than normal to set themselves up for the chase. Quite the contrast to the last add-on we talked about, but I truly do believe Poster is not only a super unique add-on, but one that can pull Springtrap's whole kit together. And I wish more people will give it a try and see what it can do. And it can lead to a healthy playstyle, as wanting to throw the axe to go for those longer range hits can be much better than trying to zone with it or just use it for back revs. And the reason why is because while I love this add-on, it's depending on the map, depending on the survivor, depending on the layout, depending on what perks you're bringing, what perks they have, this add-on can screw you over, but it can also be very valuable. You will end the chase 12% faster no matter what. However, because of a lot of the inconsistencies with how the map layouts can work, and again, with how the survivors play, whether it's a good idea to pull your axe back out or keep it in them for the extra vault and movement speed, all of these factors make it very unreliable and a lot of things that can go wrong. However, when it does work, I do think it is one of his more powerful add-ons. Maybe I'm wrong with that. Maybe I'm wrong with that. But yeah. Unreliable and weak. I wonder what add-on I'm putting in. Did anyone not see this coming? Did anyone not see Office Phone? Dead by Daylight has a lot of bad add-ons, but it also has some borderline useless ones, like Pile of Nails on Chucky or Hellshire Iron on Deathslinger. Cue the comments of, I actually find these add-ons super useful and think they're underrated. Listen, if that is you for Office Phone, the current topic of this video, that is fine, but this video is not for you. If you enjoy them and can make them work, more power to you. This is an opinion piece with some logic as to my reasoning thrown in, so now is your chance to leave the video.
There's the door, bitch!
Now, what makes an add-on bad? Oftentimes, it's as simple as not having a very good effect, such as cattle prod. Other times, it's an effect that is not good for that killer in particular, such as acidic blood, or in rare cases, it's something actively detrimental like Pile of Nails. Now, where does this leave Office Phone? Well, it's all of them and a little bit more.
You suck.
Okay, let's break it down as to why. The Oblivious effect can be a decent thing to allow you to sneak up on a survivor. However, Springtrap is loud when walking and can be heard coming, so using it to go after a different target after landing an axe is not really reliable. It's not even mentioning the fact that the person you're probably chasing with the Oblivious is within 24 meters, so they probably still see you coming anyways. Okay, they're on 4, we go to 5, we wrap arounds. Like, the Leon is in range here, but he's oblivious, and he can clearly see me coming. I'm chasing him at the current moment. What is this realistically doing for me? Even if I get an injury on him and he's broken, by that time the axe comes out of him. So, cool, I guess. But what about the broken effect if someone is injured? The main use of this is for the info knowing someone is there, but there are a few issues with this. We are in a healing meta right now. It's probably the biggest one. And even if we weren't, the main time this situation would happen is after an unhook. And while it can cause any healing done to not only be stopped, but reset, which is cool, but not that great of an effect, it's still just not that good. This situation is basically you just forcing a tunnel, which is something Springtrap is already very good at. And unlike a game like Pokemon, a lot of times in this game, extenuating a killer's strengths is not really what you want to do. You want to cover up their weaknesses. Okay, so what else? Oh yeah, the effect is only active while they're in the range. If someone walks into the range of an axe survivor and gets broken, the second they leave that range, they are no longer broken. So this effect, at most, told you an injured person walked into that 24-meter range. The other issue is one that I have brought up as to why many perks aren't ran, and that is the lack of feedback. Unless it's the broken effect, you have almost no real way of knowing that this add-on was the reason as to why you got a hit or caught a survivor off guard. Perfect. Change targets. Oh, the Oblivious legit might have got me that hit. So the Oblivious effect gives you no feedback as to it working, and the broken effect goes away the moment they get out of the X. There's been a few times when I've used this add-on, and I didn't even realize it went off, and half the time I thought it was because they were out of range. No, it's just because they walked out. That does that. She didn't get broken? That does that. She didn't get broken? And feedback is very important. Even something like Foxy's hook gets you a hit you would have gotten anyways. The feedback of the haste makes you feel as if there was a reason as to why. If you get it down from the aura of purple guy drawing, you can clip it and can say it was because of it. And almost all the other add-ons are like this, with the exceptions of the passive ones, like streamers. But this often uses a feel-good add-on more than anything, making it still have a tangible feeling of usefulness. It's also an effect that can be done better by just perks. Plaything can be done easier, and even Deathbound can make it be done easier. That's just the Oblivious effects. Force Penance is a much better broken add-on, as it'll actually break the person who is even healthy in that situation. And with this lack of synergy with Springtrap's base kit and other add-ons, it's just an add-on that often kind of is there, not doing much of anything. Want a grab build? Run Poster and Plate. Haste with an M1 focus? Run Foxy's Hook. You want Undetectable? Run Faz Coin. Aura Reading? Purple Guy Drawing. I can keep going. One of the best things about Springtrap is just how he works with anything, because his add-ons let him focus on different aspects of things, and Office Phone just doesn't do that, and it's really the only outlier of his add-on design. The one thing the add-on has over the other bad ones is that it is at least not hurting you to run it on its own. Pile of nails! And does something, but that's on its own is not really something you really need or want. The thing with Office Phone and even Pile of Nails, can you tell I really wanted an excuse to rant about Pile of Nails again?
Leave me alone!
The idea is there for an add-on that can do something interesting and even good to a degree, and I feel it's a simple thing to fix without needing a full rework. And that change is just making the effect linger for 15 to 20 seconds. This means that once someone leaves the range, and that's it. Just make it so once they leave the range for 15 or 20 seconds, the effects linger. This includes the Oblivious or the Broken. This would mean the Broken effect can help you clean up survivors that you're down, as I didn't even mention once, if you grab or down the survivor with the axe in them, the phone's effects go away for the person in range, so you can't even use it to snowball, or even throw it into a hit and run playstyle. It would also mean you can combo it with something like Poster to make the axe survivor cover more ground, causing the effect to possibly hit more people, and allow for a bit of feedback as you manage to sneak up on someone or down a broken survivor. You know it was the add-on that did that for you. Something else I want to change is the other effect that it has that people really don't mention, as it doesn't really come up often, that being that it makes other survivors pull the axe out 50% faster. This almost never comes into play, even in a real match, and honestly isn't that big of a deal. But to help it have a combo with other add-ons and help his base kit a bit, is to make the axe be pulled out 20% faster if this add-on is being ran. In general, this would combo with Purple Guy Drawing, as the axe being pulled out gives the aura reading for 6 seconds and instantly gives you the axe back, letting you line up a shot the moment it comes back. But as far as base kit, them pulling out the axe faster would mean you can get it back faster than the base recall, which is 10 seconds, and then pulling it out is 8, and it would be lowered to 7 seconds with this change, making it the same as a miss recall, but only if they pull it out. Now, with all that said, is Office Phone the worst add-on in the game? No. Not by a long shot, but considering how well designed all of Springtrap's add-ons are, it really is an outlier to me, and something I really wanted to bring to light even to those that swear by it. Is this change perfect? No. As with most things, it's just one idea. I've seen others, like making the Oblivious and Broken linger on the survivors that pulls the axe out, or a full rework, like making it have survivors scream within 24 meters if you down someone with the axe in them. So you have other ideas like that. But I generally wanted to keep the add-on with the same function, just better at the job it currently has. There is not much more I can say about how bad this add-on is. It's unreliable because its information is very hard to dictate. Like, I have clips. I have a few clips of getting value from Office Phone. The problem with every single one of those clips, though, and why I haven't really shown any of them, is because every single one of them would require me to explain what happened to the letter for about 3 minutes for 10 seconds of gameplay. That is the problem with Office Phone. That's why it's unreliable. As far as why it's weak, those situations don't happen. It's like 1 in like 20 matches. You'll get that one situation where Office Phone like actually nailed you something. And the funny thing is, I was talking to somebody about this too. Wandering Eye, the new perk from the Cresu, at the time of this video, is a better version of Office Phone. One of Office Phone's best things is the information it can give you on an injured survivor, because you see them get broken, so you know they're within 24 meters. Wandering Eye does the same thing, but you just start chase and it gives you aura readings, so you know exactly where they are. I'm moving on because it's Office Phone, man. Everyone knows. Consistent but weak. So this one's a hard one to determine. This one's a hard one to determine, but I actually think it's Ripped Curtin. Alright, finally time to talk about Curtin. So Ripped Curtin is an add-on on Springtrap that makes it so whenever you hit a survivor with an axe, they are hemorrhaged and mangled for 60 seconds. Now, sounds pretty good, sounds pretty okay. Few problems with it, and one of them you probably don't even know about. Before I get into that, the big thing with this is that we are in a healing meta, so this doesn't matter. 2, you're probably chasing the person that you're hitting with the axe, so also doesn't matter if they're hemorrhaged and mangled. And 3, and this is the big one, the hemorrhage and mangled doesn't apply on an axe hit. It applies on the axe being embedded. So if you down someone with the axe, you don't even get this effect. So realistically, the only time this add-on is doing anything for you is if you land an axe on somebody and then somehow lose them in chase or walk away from them and then just kind of hope it works out for you. That's really it. I do not recommend this add-on. I know some people say it's pretty okay. Again, in very niche situations, and it's not bad, you're not losing anything for running it, but in general, I just say skip it. So Rip Curtin is very consistent. It does what it needs to do every single time, but its effect isn't that good. I know it's mangled and hemorrhage. I know a lot of people will say that's a very good effect, but because this only applies on the embed, unless you're doing a hit and run playstyle with the axe, which isn't very common, I don't think it's happening. And even then, it's only 60 seconds. That's not counting the time it takes them to remove the axe. And that's not counting a lot of other issues it might have. But again, it doesn't work on downs. If this worked on downs, I would put it higher up. But it's consistent if you're landing your axes, obviously. But I just think it's too weak for what it is. Actually, you know what? No. No, you know what? No. I can't move this back down. Okay. No, actually, I'm putting streamers there. Alright, let's talk about streamers. This is an add-on I've been dreading to talk about. What does it do? It lowers the time it takes you to travel through a door by 15%. Now, what does this actually mean? So, there's a lot of numbers that are involved in Springtrap's doors, but the one this affects is the actual travel time, which takes 3 seconds. So with 50% cut off, it is 0.45 seconds faster. This is basically nothing. You will feel it for sure, believe me, you'll feel it, but it really doesn't help you too much. However, there are many people who don't think it deserved the nerf it did. I'm one of those people, because it used to be better, it used to be 20%. However, I want to point out that the 20% was not as much as you guys think it was. When it was 20%, all this saved you was 0.6 seconds. That is the only major difference. It shaved off less than 0.2 seconds from the timer once it was nerfed. Does that make it bad? No. Here's my personal opinion on streamers that people aren't gonna like, but streamers was always bad, even when it was 20%. It's to the point to where I honestly believe that streamers should just be made base kit, and it doesn't even need to be adjusted in any way, and it would be fine. If you made it base kit, took half a second off the door travel time, and then you had this also take off another half second, even though it would be less, because once the number is less, then the percentage would adjust it differently. Regardless, that's math talk. But in general, I don't think streamers is that good, and I really wish people would stop putting it on this pedestal as if it was some amazing OP add-on when it was 20%. Streamers is extremely consistent. It does its job every time you're using the door. Every time. It saves you those 0.4 seconds every single time. But that's not a very good effect. Even comboed in the builds I have around streamers, it's not a very good effect at all. I don't know. I don't think streamers... And the thing is, I don't even think they need to buff streamers. I think there's no way to buff this add-on without it becoming too strong. Or too, necessary. And then again, also, if there's those matches where you can't even use your doors, you're not even getting that much value from it. So I just don't think it's worth it. Again, it's consistent. It does its job every single time, but so it's just not a good effect. Moving down the list, I'm not going to go in any order. We're just going to pull them out. With Curtin here, I'm still going to put this down to the consistent but weak in here for the same reasons I listed a minute ago. But that's pretty much why Curtin's here. Ignore that. Access panel is going in strong but slightly unreliable. Alright, so access panel, which is the purple add-on for Springtrap that, in my opinion, is probably the most, I don't want to say misunderstood, because people understand what it does. A lot of people just don't really like using it or think it's that powerful. Now, before we get into anything, what I do want to say is I have seen some videos on it that have kind of misrepresented the add-on. And before we get in, let's just talk about what it does. Access panel makes it so that the fire axe can travel through your security doors and will exit straight through the connected door. We'll get into the connection stuff later. While you're aiming the fire axe, you also get the benefit that any survivors within 4 meters of the security door trigger Killer Instinct. There's also another effect that when you're holding your fire axe up, you will see the number of the door above the door anywhere on the map. Unless you're on Eyrie of Crows, where you can't see anything because the map is so bright, even with the gamma turned down. Behavior, if you're listening, just add a stroke around the numbers. It's something that anyone who has ever done anything with art would tell you to do, so it doesn't blend into the background anyways. So, the thing people tend to focus on with access panel a lot is the passing through security doors thing. So I'm going to cover that first. This is not that good.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
And it never was. Even on the PTB before the change for the Killer Instinct proc, it was never that good. It's a gimmick at best, and when you combine it with something like Faz Coin, can be useful. The most this will give you is if someone is actually looking through a camera, and then you can just chuck your axe through and hit them. However, this requires you to know the door linking system and how that works. And there's some problems with that on why this doesn't work as well as you think it does for it. Now, what you can do, as I stated a second ago, is you can combo this with Faz Coin, chuck your axe through a door, and now your terror radius is on the other side of the map while you're undetectable. This is one way to use it. It's a gimmick way to use it, but it can be effective and does work. The other thing you can do with this is you can combo it with Party Hat, because you can throw the axe through the door, and then the larger radius means that you basically get Killer Instinct on anyone who is nearby the door. Now, the thing to be noted is that the axe does come out at the same trajectory. It doesn't matter where you aim it on the door at all. It will always come out in a straight line and hit exactly where it will every single time. There is no stopping this. So, what about this door linking system? I have done a few videos on this, especially when Springtrap is on PTB and a little bit after. However, looking through comment sections on other videos talking about access panel, I've noticed that some people still don't fully understand how this works, and it's not me condemning anyone or anything, I'm just making the point. So I'm going to explain it again real quick. So at the beginning of the trial, every single door is linked randomly. They can even link to themselves. 7 can be linked to 7, it happens. The way you know which door is linked to which, if you look at the number on the door, which like this one says 1, the access panel on the side will say the door it is linked to. So if the door is linked from 1 to 3, when you throw the axe through 1, it'll come out of 3. Now to change the door that is linked, you need to go through the door to another door, and it will link the door behind you. I said door a lot. I'm sorry, there's really no way to get around that. So if you go from 1 to 4, 1 is linked to 4. This linking is one way. It does not link both doors. If you want to link both of them, you have to go back through 4 and go back into 1. And that's basically how it works. It's a tube system, basically. Now, the only other thing this really does affect is, one, tracking. I've used this plenty of times to track survivors, because you come up to a door that a survivor went into somehow. Maybe they did it in the middle of chase. Some survivors do it to try to catch you off guard, and you don't catch them in the grab animation in time. Just check the access panel number. If it's 4, they went to 4, so you just follow them through to 4. The other thing you can do with this, again, is with access panel, obviously, if you're looking through 1 and the Killer Instinct proc goes on 4, if the door is linked, you can throw your axe through and hit them, as long as it's linked to the proper door. The other thing this does cause is survivors, when they look through the door, the first camera they'll be on is the door that is linked to it. Survivors can also affect this. Springtrap or survivors, it doesn't matter who, anyone who goes through a door will link it to the door they go to. That is how it works. It is very simple. It kind of doesn't sound right, and I know a lot of people think that it starts linked, and that is what it's linked to forever. That is not the case. You can link it yourself if you'd like to. There's some convoluted things you can do there. So now that that part of the add-on is over with, let's talk about the other part, and probably the more important part, which is the 4 meters of killer instinct when you're holding the axe up. So here's my confession. I love this add-on. I think it's great, and I'm going to just be upfront with that now. However, the biggest issue this add-on has is that Bonnie's guitar strings does its job better.
No, I like it. This is brilliant, but I like this.
That is the unfortunate situation, and part of the reason why I'm not the biggest fan of Bonnie's. Bonnie's mere existence makes a lot of Springtrap's other add-ons just bad by comparison, Access Panel being the biggest offender of this. It doesn't matter how good Access Panel is, Bonnie's will just be better in 95% of situations. So, what about this Killer Instinct? So it's 4 meters from the door. Now this is the edges of the doors. It's hard to determine exact situations there. It is vertical from what we understand, so it does go up and down, but it is still a 4 meter it's a 4 meter sphere, not a circle, not a cylinder. It's very weird, but the point is, the issues this has is that while doors do tend to spawn next to gens, a lot of times, because of how the door logic works, and because it has to be 16 meters away from another door at minimum, they'll be in weird spots, especially on indoor maps like Midwich or Larry's, but even on outdoor maps, the doors will spawn in locations that just don't really coincide. The other problem with this is that, as me and many other Springtrap players have mentioned to people, whenever you have your axe, it's probably a bad thing. Throw it so you're 115 as much as you can be. So you don't really have the benefit of having your axe out all the time unless you're purposely doing it and making yourself 1/10 the entire game. Something you can do with this, though, is that when you're in the middle of chase, throw up your axe, you'll hear the Killer Instinct proc, and then you know where to go. This leads into Access Panel's biggest time to shine, which is when someone's looking at you through a camera. And this is only if the doors happen to be linked, but if you hear someone looking at you through a camera, just chuck your axe through a door. Boom, bam, bop, you'll hit them if the doors happen to be linked. That's a conversation for another day, but a lot of times you will end up getting the hit. You'd be surprised. And when this happens, you injured someone on the other side of the map. Problem with this is that, one, injuring someone on the other side of the map isn't that big of a deal unless you can follow it up immediately by going through the door, but even then, it depends on the chase you're in. There's a lot of factors there. The other massive issue with this is people don't really use cams. I've heard so many complaints about people saying Springtrap's weakness is the fact that he can be seen on the cameras all the time, and it makes him frustrating to play. I have played this killer for over 60 hours of in-game time, according to behavior stats. I can count on both of my hands the amount of times someone has tried to and been able to reveal me with a camera in over 60 hours of gameplay. I don't know what survivors you guys are getting. I don't know if it's my MMR. I don't know if it's SPMM. I don't know if it's just because of the time of day I play. But I rarely, if ever, see anyone using the cameras in any semblance of a way, unless they're throwing the match, or it's already over and we're just messing around. That's about the only time I ever see it. And unfortunately, that's the downside of Access Panel, is one of its biggest strengths is required for the survivors to do something that you have no control over, that a lot of times they won't do anyways. And again, it is only within 4 meters of the door. Its biggest purpose, its main purpose, is to find people who are using the cameras. That is its main purpose. However, while it can be bad and inconsistent, when this add-on does work, this is uncounterable information that the survivors have no idea you have. There is nothing they can do about it. If the doors happen to spawn in the perfect way, which isn't uncommon, I need to make this very clear. While the door logic can be a little wonky, most of the time it's still pretty good. It will spawn like right next to a generator a lot of the times. And then what you can do with that info is know exactly where to go, which door to come out of. And unlike Bonnie's guitar strings, if you enjoy having the undetectability on Springtrap, while it does have its problems, I know a lot of people do enjoy it, Access Panel lets you keep that undetectability. So you can still use it in a way that lets you play Springtrap in the more traditional sense. Could it be buffed? yes, I think access panel could 100% be buffed. I think we could up it to 6 meters. Do I think it needs to be buffed? Not necessarily. My problem with buffing this add-on is that I didn't even mention some of the other things you can do with this. Again, you can combo it with things like iridescent coin, party hat, even like Foxy's hook, so you can throw the axe through the door, and when you come out of the door, get the haste as you're walking away. Like, that's something you could very easily do, and it actually works out better than you would think. But the other thing with this is you can use it in chase. Again, it's uncounterable info. It's anywhere a door is. I have caught people off guard with this because they're next to a door and they're hiding nearby for like a flashlight save or whatever. I pull up my axe and boom, they're right there. A lot of times I get this for door grabs because it's the only real way to know if someone's using your doors while you're in chase if you don't happen to be next to a door. Because you will get an audio cue when someone's using the doors, but you don't know if they went through or not. So if you hold up the axe and hear the killer instinct next to a door and you look over and you see that they are on it, then you can go through a door and more than likely get the grab. You would be surprised how often this can happen. If you're trying to get the achievement on Springtrap, Access Panel is the add-on I tell everyone to run to try and get it. It is the only real way to know without just waiting in a door and hoping the survivors pity you. But again, the biggest issue that Access Panel has is power creep. Now, it does not have the downsides that Bonnie's guitar string has. However, it does have a downside. It's just one that no one cares about. So the downside to Access Panel is that since the axe goes through the door, unless you shoot it from behind or specifically at the camera, you can't disable the door, which is a function that a lot of people forget Springtrap even has. Yes, you can throw your axe at a door and stop survivors from going through it or looking through the camera. You can still use it. They can't, though. It's a weird function that almost never gets brought up. But as much as I've been ranting about Access Panel, again, its issue is just its comparison to Bonnie's guitar strings. The job this add-on is trying to do is the same thing Bonnie's is trying to do. The difference is that this can work at any stage of the game. You can use this to get Lethal Pursuer basically at the beginning of the match. You can use this to find survivors when you have no idea where anyone is. You can use this to know what door to go through. But everything I just listed, Bonnie's does, with the downside of the undetectability, which, as I've stated in a few other videos, doesn't really help you that much. The undetectability is nice, but it is not that good. And honestly, that's the thing with Access Panel. As long as Bonnie exists, this add-on will get overshadowed by it, outside of its few gimmicks. I will say one really nice thing this add-on does do that a lot of people don't talk about is the numbers above the doors. When you're holding your axe up, you can see the numbers above the doors. And while this doesn't seem like a big deal, a lot of times it lets me pre-plan what I'm doing. So I can just be like holding my axe up and being like, okay, I want to go to that gen over there by 2. Okay, well, I know exactly where 2 is without having to like turn my camera once I go into the door. Which you could argue object permanence and all this stuff, but it just helps a little bit with the brain power. It's just one less thing to think about. It's the reason why I run Lightborn sometimes. While yes, I could just stare at a wall and not get blinded, sometimes it's nice to just not worry about it, you know? It's one less thing I have to think about. But Access Panel isn't his worst add-on. Bar none is it his worst add-on. This add-on has a lot of good qualities and good functions, and if you run it for a little bit, you will see it happen. And the thing with this that it does have over Bonnie's, again, is that you technically don't have to go through the door to get or use the information. You can just hold your axe up. If you're not using your doors, like, directly, Access Panel really isn't a bad idea. Problem with that is then you're not linking them correctly, and then it kind of has issues there. But the link system is only really valuable if you're going for the gimmicky axe through the door hits, but it's not that reliable, but it is what it is. But again, it's not his worst add-on. We all know what his worst add-on is.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would. But I legally can't. But I've considered it.
But it is an add-on that's very interesting and a really cool gimmick. And, again, behavior, if you're listening, the tech is there to make the portals on Borgo and Forgotten Ruins instance so powers can go through them. You literally have the tech right here. I know you can do it because the code is already in the game to allow it to happen. Just saying how cool it would be for a Hunter's Hatchet to go through a portal from the top of Borgo to the bottom. Oh, that would be so cool. It would never be useful almost ever, but it would also get rid of the frustration of portals. Anyways, that's a different discussion. The problem Access Panel has is just door placements, which bad door placement doesn't happen as much as people like to think it does, but on the maps it does. This add-on is so bad. But combined with a few things, it can be good. The info is never, like, the info is no counter, and the survivors really have no way of knowing you have it unless you throw your axe through the door. Which is another thing, you know, comboing a party hat to get that extra info, comboing with iridescent coin to get that extra, terror radius on the other side of the map. I think it's decently strong for what it does and what it's trying to do. I just think it's just slightly too unreliable. We'll get it out of the way now. Bonnie's guitar string, strong and decently consistent. All right, everyone knew it was coming. This is... I'm not even gonna make a joke about this. This is Springtrap's best add-on. I know some people will maybe argue this, but if you ask 95% of people who've played Springtrap, or anyone who even has the slightest indication of Springtrap's add-ons, Bonnie's Guitar Strings is widely considered Springtrap's best add-on.
I don't make mistakes. I'm not just like the rest of you. I'm stronger. I'm smarter. I'm better. I am better.
Now, what does it do before we keep going for those that aren't aware? Bonnie's Guitar Strings makes it so that when you are inside of a security door, you can see the intensity of the generators as they turn from white to red based on how much progress they have. It also has the downside of making it so that your undetectability when coming out of a door is subtracted by 100%. I will get more into that subtraction later because it is kind of important to mention. So, why is this so good? One, it can act like a mini lethal pursuer at the beginning of the match. You can go into a door, wait till you see a generator go slightly pink, and then teleport to that door. Don't need to bring lethal pursuer, you know exactly where the survivors are and where to start pressuring. It can be kind of hard to see it in this clip, but the generator I'm currently looking at is not fully white, it is slightly pink, which means that it is being worked on, even if it's a small amount. But you can use this at the beginning of a match again to get this early pressure like I did on this hit I got on the David. Really? We're gonna pre-drop this one? 2, during the middle of a match after you hook somebody, go into a door, now you know exactly where to go without the need for a perk for it, which can then be used with perks like Pop Goes the Weasel or just in general to get pressure because you know where the survivors generally are. And 3, just in general, it's good information. If you can't find a single survivor, let's say it's not even after a hook, and you have no idea where to go, hop into a security door, see which gen is red, go to red. Now, it has been nerfed from the PTB to live, and it was then nerfed again in another patch. So the way it currently works now, it has the downside effect of 100% loss of your undetectability. Something that should be noted with this is that unlike most things that do this, the fact that it says minus 100% does not mean you can't go undetectable from coming out of a door. If you run security badge, this will still give you 5 seconds of undetectable. Is it worth it? In my opinion, not really, but it is something you can do. So if you still want the undetectable from when you come out of a door, maybe you're going to the door next to the gen, and still want that undetectable to catch up a little bit, you can totally 100% do that. Now, the other thing with this is that Bonnie's Guitar Strings did get nerfed, and I'm not going to sit here and say that the nerf wasn't a nerf and it was actually a buff, but it did give it some benefits. There are many terror radius builds that you cannot run on Springtrap unless you run Bonnie's Guitar Strings, because of the fact that when you come out of the door, you have the 20 seconds of undetectable. So you can use this to circumvent that. That includes perks like Phantom Fear, that includes Infectious Fright. Anything that involves your terror radius, you can now use because of Bonnie's Guitar Strings. So it allows for the thing I've said so many times about Springtrap's add-ons, build diversity, because each perk allows you to slot it in as kind of like a staple on how the builds work. Other combos you can do with this is something like iridescent coin to make up for the lack of undetectability, but you can also just in general run it with something like streamers so you get to the door 4.4 seconds faster, which can matter. It also means that survivors can't just do the gens at any point in the map without you knowing. They can't really sneak a 3-gen, and that's the other thing with Bonnie's is it makes 3-gen situations, no matter the size of the map, virtually impossible, because he just knows which gen you're on at all times. Even if you manage to not have a 3-gen that was right next to each other, with Bonnie's, you can basically circumvent that entire scenario. So, are there any downsides to running Bonnie's? Is there anything bad with it? Yes and no. The worst case scenario for Bonnie's guitar strings is you bring it into a match and things are going so fast. You find one survivor at the beginning of the match that you didn't have to go through a door to find, and then once you hook them, you were able to see another survivor maybe nearby and start hooking them, and then you find another one or go back to the hook after they unhooked. But you were able to do all of these things without ever going into your doors, so Bonnie's didn't do anything for you. That is the worst case scenario for this perk. It doesn't get use because the game is going so fast that you can't even use it for the info it provides. That is worst case scenario, and honestly not that bad of a deal. That is honestly why I keep saying this add-on is really powerful to the point where it overshadows all of his others. There are many people who don't think Access Panel is worth it because Bonnie's does its job but better.
He does exactly what I do, but better.
Now, Access Panel doesn't have the downside of Bonnie's, but the downside of Bonnie's isn't that big of a deal. Springtrap's undetectability is nice to catch up on survivors, however, because of how loud he can be, it doesn't really matter all too much.
I'm right behind you, aren't I?
Again, it can be useful, I'm not saying it's not, but there are times when it really does not do the job it needs to do. So, that leads us into, does it need to change or anything like that? And honestly, I don't think so. I think the downside they gave it is perfectly fine. It's not the downside I wanted when he first came out. I wanted it to make you go through doors slower because you know where you're going, so I feel the downside of being slowed down from getting there is perfectly fine. But the 100% undetectability is also okay. And the fact that it can still work with badge if you do want the undetectability is really nice in my opinion. But in general, if you really want to know what is the best thing to run on Springtrap, Bonnie's guitar strings, any other add-on, and then, you know, the full meta slowdown builds, and you'll be perfectly fine in doing what you need to do. That's really what it comes down to. Bonnie's is just that good that it overshadows all of his other perks for better.
I think I see the problem. That's it. This
add-on
flows.
And worse. I don't think it needs to be changed. I think some other add-ons need to be adjusted, but that's really about it. And this is just one I was really kind of dreading talking about because of how blatantly good it is and how little there is to really say about it. It's simple, it's effective, and it's just really good. The only inconsistency with Bonnie's guitar strings, again, is the same inconsistency with streamers, but it's in an ideal world, it is literally right there with menu. These two add-ons are right beside, like, on top of each other, but, you know, tier list won't let me do that. It's too... The information it provides is so strong. Its downside is negligible for the most part. Even with the changes they've done to his audio, the undetectability is kind of negligible depending on how you're playing. Plus, who cares about being undetectable if you know exactly where to go anyways? Like, it's such a... This add-on is so good. I mean, even at the beginning of the match, it's a lethal pursuer. Towards the end of the match, it's like you can use it to know where the survivors have been. There's so much information you can gain from Bonnie's guitar strings that aren't like the obvious ones. And again, you can combo with badge if you want the 5 seconds of undetectable, which isn't much, but it can matter. You can use it to go to another door, not the one directly on them, so they don't run away immediately. This add-on just does so much, and it's the reason why Access Panel is often seen as not good, because Bonnie's does its job better. Greasy paper plate. This increases the removal time of the axe by 15%. Give or take, this adds about a second to them removing the axe. This can be good if you're running it with poster, because it means they'll have the axe in them longer. Same with something like Purple Guy drawing to make that aura reading effect on them longer, and it might encourage them to try to take the axe out more often, because they see it takes longer to do. Again, if you're doing a grab build or something that requires the axe to be in them for whatever reason, it can be pretty useful. You can also throw this on maybe a build with iridescent coin to make it so they travel around with the terror radius more often. Anything like that can be very, very good. I'll put it down here. Greasy paper plate, it gives you 1 more seconds before they can pull the axe out. It's not that strong. It really depends, but even if you're running a build around it, it's really one of those, like, it just makes sense to run it. That's why I run it. I don't want to say it's, like, super weak either, because it really isn't. As far as consistency goes, I mean, it always gives you that extra 1 second. There's no getting around that. The most inconsistent thing unreliable thing about it is just how The only unreliable thing about it is, you know, obviously missing your axe, but that doesn't really count. That's player error and all that stuff, and it goes into other things. But it's a weird thing with Greasy Paper Plate to kind of like rationalize its placement, just because, again, that 1 second can matter. It can mean nothing. Even if you do get the grab, it doesn't really mean much. So how strong is that actually? That's why I kind of want to put it closer to consistent in the middle of the tier. Let's do an Iridescent Coin. Faz Coin is an add-on that, like many things in Dead by Daylight, isn't the greatest. Therefore, it's seen as not bad or worth running. Like, honestly, it's completely overlooked, and that's what I mean when I say overlooked in a lot of these videos. It's not only good, but honestly, it might be secretly one of Springtrap's best add-ons, and I'll go into why here in a second. Springtrap's best add-on.
This is the 7th week in a row.
Said that this is Springtrap's best add-on. As always, let's go over what it does before I gush about it. Anytime your axe is thrown, you become undetectable for 10 seconds, and your axe gains a 24-meter terror radius. A few things to note is that the terror radius from your axe is not lost until you get it back. So whenever you miss the axe, wherever the axe is, it has a 24-meter terror radius. You go undetectable for 10 seconds, and the axe keeps that terror radius the entire time. Until it is back, it keeps that terror radius. One good thing that should be also noted is that this also works on an axe hit. So if you hit a survivor with an axe, they get a 24-meter terror radius around them. As well, with the timings, a missed axe can be retrieved in 7 seconds with a 1.5-second animation to retrieve it, plus a 1-second animation to wind up and a half-second for you to throw it. That is exactly 10 seconds. This isn't accounting for running menu, which means that if you keep throwing your axe as soon as you can virtually stay undetectable throughout the entire match, as long as your timing is perfect. But it should be noted to pay attention to where your axe is being thrown, as the TR from it can give you away, as well as that recalling the axe will cause you to laugh, giving away your exact location to anyone within about 16-ish meters. We don't have the exact distance testing on the laugh when you get the axe back, but it's about 16 meters. While the TR never goes away from the axe once it has been thrown, even once the timer for the undetectable is over, something not mentioned in the add-on's description is that it does not apply terror radius effects such as chlorophobia, so it can't be built around other terror radius perks. We're not sure if this is a bug or intentional.
I don't know.
Because of how the axe terror radius works, and because it is basically unlimited time, I have a feeling this was completely intentional, but it is kind of odd that it isn't mentioned anywhere in the add-on description. On its own, this can be used to let you walk up on people when they least expect it, as well as just removing your red stain and chase, which can throw off even good survivors and let you get hits that would normally not be that easy, but they won't see coming. This can be done on the hit or miss, making the follow-up of an M1 easier, even within a loop. And something I want to keep repeating, as it's not how many of Springtrap's add-ons work, most requiring you either to land your axe or miss it, not both, to get their effects. Another benefit it has is acting as a buffer to your undetectability from going through a door, as throwing it right before the base 20-second ends can give you a slight leeway to keep your undetectable going, which you can also supplement with something like Badge, but this is more consistent, as you can do it at any time you want. The constant terror radius coming from the axe does have other utilities, as in loops, terror radius gauging is a common way to know the killer's location, as a survivor can tell from the intensity and the sound of the terror radius your exact position and where you're moving. Springtrap is already very loud as well, so the terror radius can cover up some of his noise, especially with the glitch trap skin. But what should be noted here is also, once your undetectability ends and the terror radius is still on your axe, that now they have to deal with 2 overlapping terror radiuses. And anyone who's played 2v8 before knows how annoying and not accurate you can be when you're looking out for 2 terror radiuses. As well as putting it at a location such as near a hook, survivor can throw off survivors and save you a couple seconds to put yourself in a better position. But its main use case is that the instant undetectable you gain on demand. Now, it does have some combos with both perks and add-ons, but the biggest and most fun, in my opinion, and something that was mentioned by my community when I asked about their thoughts on this, is Access Panel. As throwing the axe through a door allows you to put your terror radius on the other side of the map, possibly throwing survivors off to your location, as well as putting the axe in a place where it wouldn't give you away on your approach towards other survivors. You can also combine this with Unforeseen and Dark Devotion to have your terror radius in 3 places of the map at once. While not the most practical thing, it can be funny, and extremely disorienting for survivors. While Faz Coin is nowhere near anything super powerful or game-changing, it's a reliable add-on that is never really bad to run and can lead to some funny plays. A common one I use it for is with Lethal Pursuer to walk to my first target, as many survivors don't expect Springtrap to walk up to them, as he would more likely go to a door and teleport towards them, and that's what they're looking out for. Survivor? Part of the reason being... No one expects that! Give it a try, and you can see that it has many more use cases than what I have said here, and you might grow to enjoy it like myself, and having it on-demand undetectability is almost never a bad thing. And also, as noted, this has no downside. There is no downside to running this add-on. It doesn't force you to miss your axe. It doesn't force you to land your axe. So the two add-ons that I see commonly said are really, really strong on Springtrap are often Purple Guy Drawing or Bonnie's Guitar or Hook. All of them have issues. Bonnie's Guitar removes your undetectability, which you can build around, but has its issues. But on top of that, if you don't have time to be using your doors, you're not getting much effect from it. Hook requires you to miss, so if you're landing all of your axes, not saying you're going to, but if you do land all of your axes, Hook didn't do anything for you that entire match. And then the inverse for drawing. If you're not landing any axes, drawing is doing literally nothing for you. Faz Coin is one of the rare add-ons he has that has no prerequisition, no way to set up. You just play like you normally do. Maybe now and then you throw your axe off in a random location to get the undetectability if you want, but just using it normally in chase, how you would normally use an axe in general, can still get you some hits and a lot of value from it. And that's where I think this add-on shines in general. And unlike a lot of other iridescent add-ons, it's not like a super powerful effect that I think even needs to be nerfed or changed. I would think about adding Terror Radius perk interactions to it, but at the same time, I don't think it necessarily needs it. I think it's fine as is. And again, it's just an add-on that I think fits into any build you want it to. A lot of times when I don't know what to run on with a certain perk that I'm testing on Springtrap, I just throw on Faz Coin. Unless it's something that requires me to have my Terror Radius, there's no reason not to run this add-on. It's like down here on strong but consistent. It's like right at the bottom of strong and consistent. It's not weak by any means. Being able to go undetectable whenever you want and move your terror radius around like it does is very, very good. As far as inconsistency goes, it is literally the most consistent add-on Springtrap has. You throw your axe and you get undetectable for 10 seconds and your terror radius moves to the axe. Like, there's never a situation where this is going to hurt you. Ever. It's never bad to have this add-on on. And I think that's what really pushes it for me. And it's why I love this add-on so much. And what I think makes it worthy of being an iridescent is just it's never bad. It's not super strong. The undetectable can be good, but again, depending on what you're doing with your axe, it might not even really matter too much. But, you know, losing your red stain in the loop can matter. So, hooray. Yeah. Purple Guy Drawing. Okay, I'll do the joke.
Purple Guy!
With that out of the way, let's talk about the obligatory aura add-on for Springtrap being Purple Guy Drawing, which will cause anyone doing a rush action while the axe is in them to show their aura for 3 seconds, and when they remove the axe for 6 seconds. As always, some notes. For some reason, unlike the perk I'm All Ears, the rush action condition is not stopped by Quick and Quiet, as well as the axe removal condition does have to be done by the survivor, not Springtrap. And obviously, Lethal Pursuer does increase the duration of the aura reading by 2 seconds, so it goes from 3 to 5 for the rushed action and 6 to 8 for the axe removal. Should also be noted that this does work when a survivor goes into a locker while they have the axe in their back. However, the moment they get in the locker, the axe is removed, so blah, blah, blah. But you can see when somebody goes into a locker with this. So how good is it? Well, generally, it's actually a decent effect that comes in handy for more than you might think. The main thing noted often is that it is pretty much a free I'm All Ears with no cooldown, only requiring the axe to be in them, which can lead to some funny mind games at some loops like Shack and can lead to spring spots, something I haven't until now gotten a chance to talk about. Hello. It's spring spotted. It's spring spotted. Spring spots are something that those that have come to my streams, which happen Monday through Thursdays, 11 p.m. till 2 a.m. EST, know very well, and those who have seen my many Chucky clips of doing something similar, and much like Chucky, the idea is standing around a corner and waiting for the survivor to run into you. With drawing, you will be looking out for the double backs rather than them waiting around a normal corner at all times. Springtrap is loud when moving, but thematically decently quiet while standing still. If they aren't pulling the axe out, you will also see the aura of the axe rather than them to do the same thing, which leads into the second part of them removing the axe. Now, you can use this for basic info, but its biggest benefit is that once the axe is removed, you are able to wind up with no cooldown and get those 6 seconds of aura reading to line up that shot at taller loops. This can be used for orbitals or for general line of sight blockers, and can be thrown over things like lockers on midwitch and anything in a similar vein to that where the shot can arc. This is a situation that can often put survivors in a lose-lose scenario, and unless they are running distortion, they have no way of knowing this effect is happening, giving you almost constant info on them in a chase, with the condition that you can land your axe. And that is honestly this add-on's biggest downside. While it can be said to just hit your shots.
What the fuck? When you play bad, don't.
That is not always the easiest thing with Springtrap, and leads us to the obvious combo with restaurant menu, to make getting your axe back faster when you miss. Another combo is poster, as having the aura reading with the speed can allow for some insane mind games along with the increased lunge. Plus the extra vault speed will make many try to vault more, and poster often makes the survivors try to take the axe out sooner, and plate, as it means that the axe will be in them for about a second longer, maybe allowing for another vault to happen for the aura reading proc. There is also a third playstyle that can be done with drawing that is a hit and run way of playing Springtrap that can be risky, but if it works, very effective. And is a time in one of these add-on videos, I'll be giving a full build to help you understand its potential. Running drawing with streamers, or Curtin if you prefer for the mangled and hemorrhage, trust me, it will be important. And for perks, you have Lethal Pursuer to not only help you find survivors early, but also add those 2 seconds to the aura reading. And the last perk that's necessary for the build is Deathbound. The basic idea is you hit someone with the axe, and then go into a door to find a new target. Once you have your axe back, look for the aura they're showing from the drawing, and return to harass them. If they heal up, Deathbound will keep them oblivious, and allow for you to more easily sneak attack. The process basically lets you constantly move around the map, being a gnat to the survivors, and drawing allows you to know where to go at most times, catching survivors off guard. Again, as stated, not the most effective way to play Springtrap, but a playstyle many won't see coming, and can be quite rewarding once you have the rhythm of how it works down. Now, is drawing something that is massively game-changing? Not really, as with most of Springtrap's add-ons, nothing is going to massively change how the game plays out, but it's also not one that has its clear use case and can make landing follow-up axes as well as normal mind games just easier, helping your downtime on survivors. So I do highly recommend giving it a try if you haven't, and be sure to combo it with Lethal Pursuer at almost all times, which it's already a good perk on Springtrap, but in general, it's just hard not to run this just out of obligation. This is a toughie. It's not weak. I mean, aura reading on vaults is pretty good. So, as far as consistency goes, I think I'll probably put it, like, right above plate, like, right over here. The problem with purple guy drawing is that the consistency, to me, would rely on how much does the information actually help you. Because it can, but, you know, a lot of times, because of how Springtrap plays, especially when the axe is in them, if they vault, then it becomes an issue of... It becomes an issue of what can he really do with that info. You're still a 115 killer, so unless they're leaving the tile, which is good info to have, but a lot of times you're like right behind them, so it doesn't really matter too much. The most consistent thing it can do for you is once they pull the axe out, and then you can just line up the aura read and get the down from that. But again, that requires 7 seconds, or I'm sorry, 8 seconds, and it also requires them to actually pull the axe out, which, depending on the survivor, might not happen, depending on the circumstance, might not happen. Help Wanted Ad! First, we're going to start with Help Wanted Ad. Help Wanted Ad shows you the starting trajectory of the fire axe. Basically, it's just a learning tool. It can help you learn exactly how the trajectory is going to go. It isn't instant. You do have to wait a couple seconds for it to actually go off. Now, the thing with this add-on is that while I don't recommend people use it, even when they're learning, at least in an actual match, what it can be very, very helpful with is going into a custom and going around the map and seeing where the axe can fall based on your trajectory, basically to learn lineups. Outside of that, I, again, don't recommend even using it to learn, as relying on it can lead to bad mistakes being made. But if you're going to, it's really not a bad thing, and probably one of the best learning add-ons in the entire game. It's better than Nurses, it's better than Victor's, so honestly, highly recommend you trying it out. Probably right here. I mean, it does its job. It's just not actually, in fact, I'm just going to put it right there beside streamers. It does its job, right? It's consistent. And it's hard to determine whether or not having a reticle is strong or weak. So I would say weak. Just because, like, you know, it's one of those things, once you learn the trajectory, you don't really need it. So, like, it's a victim of its own design, really. It's not a bad thing. It doesn't, like, again, it does what it's supposed to. So, like, I can't even be mad about it. So yeah, I definitely put it down there. I will say, though, with Help Wanted Ad, those matches we did during the running every add-on stream a little while ago, the match where I used Help Wanted Ad, I think it was on Swamp, I was getting hits I probably wouldn't have gotten without it, because I didn't have to think about the arc. I was just able to use it and determine where the survivor was going to end up and just use it that way. Instead of thinking about the axe and the survivor, I was thinking about just the survivor, because the axe arc was taken care of mentally. So that is definitely, like, points for it. I just still don't think it's necessarily strong. Let's get the other area out. Iridescent Remnant! Okay, Iridescent Remnant. This is probably one of the most forgettable Springtrap add-ons that almost no one ever mentions, because it has some problems, and we'll get into that here in a second. So what does it do? Iridescent Remnant makes it so you block all upright pallets within 32 meters of a security door when you exit it for 12 seconds. A couple things to note is that 12 seconds is kind of a lie, kind of not really. So the blocking happens when you're going through the animation. So it's actually more about 10-ish seconds of blocking, not 12. And that's if you're running streamers with it. Now, something to note is that it's also only upright pallets. It does not block down pallets or windows like it used to on the PTB, but they did expand the range. On PTB, it used to be 24 meters, I believe. But yeah, so what are the use cases for this? So Iridescent Remnant has a lot of problems when it comes to using it well. So some things it can do is, obviously, it can stop pre-dropping before you come through a door. Believe me, this is something you will notice happening depending on the survivor. Once they see the blinking, they will pre-drop a pallet if it's right next to the door. It happens way more than you think it does. That was a pre-drop and a half, by the way. But the big thing with it is that this can mean you have basically 10 seconds of freedom when you come out of the door to not deal with anything other than windows, which we'll get into something later that kind of deals with that as well. Now, is this add-on really, like, super hidden OP good? No, and it does have one fatal flaw. Springtrap has a lot of tells when he's coming through a door. The main thing is the flashing of the door, so the survivors know when you're coming through it. Also, the sound can also give it away. It's very slight, but it's there. So the survivors will often pre-run you. Now, with Iridescent Remnant happening when you're halfway through the teleport animation, they get even more of a warning. And it's not any earlier or anything like that, but it is definitely more of an obvious warning for those that don't know about the normal counterplay to seeing the doors. So it can give you away that way, which makes it very, very difficult to use at the right times. On top of that, one of the ways that me and many other Springtrap players will use doors is often going to the door next to the one we want to go to get the undetectability to walk up on survivors, so they can't just pre-run you away. But with Iridescent Remnant, you can't really do that. I mean, you can, but you're not getting the most value out of it. So I do want to go into a couple use cases that it does have, which the biggest one obviously is stopping the upright pallets. Now, like I said earlier, the problem with this is that you're not stopping windows. There are some things for this. One, you can run Hex Crowd Control. I often run Iridescent Remnant in a Hex build with Blood Favor, Crowd Control, and Undying. This basically means that the survivors have no resources to use once they've used them originally. So Iridescent Remnant lets you go through the door, you hit someone with either an M1 or an M2, and then all the pallets are blocked from Blood Favor. If they use a window, they can only use it once because of Crowd Control. Problem with this is it's very risky because obviously it's a Hex build, but you'd be surprised how well it can work out. However, the build I have fallen in love with, and the one I'm going to mention today, and the one you're seeing in the background, is what I call the ventilation error build. Me and my chat have come up with this during stream, because I was looking at Iridescent Remnant and thinking of ways to make it work out. And we found the perk that can do it, because we found one, a good one. Cruel Limits.
You serious?
This is a perk that is often forgotten about for a lot of reasons. My best guess is because it was a Demogorgon perk and the name has changed 3 times and it wasn't good back in the day and it got buffed about a year and a half ago. So what does Cruel Limits do? Cruel Limits makes it so whenever a generator pops, every window on the map is blocked. They cannot be used by anyone for 30 seconds. So combining this with Remnant, when you go through a door next to a gen that has popped, they can't use any of the upright pallets and they can't use any of the windows. They're just free game. They have no resources. You're just running them down. So some other things to combo this with is batteries included, so you get movement speed next to that gen that just popped, as well as deadlock, so more than one gen doesn't pop at a time, so Cruel Limits doesn't reset its cooldown, and then Tinkerer, so you know when the gen is about to be done, you can sit in the door and wait and then surprise them with this. Is this a really meta build? No, not really, but it leads to some funny moments, and you'd be surprised how snowbally it can end up being. And in my opinion, it's probably one of the most lore-accurate Springtrap builds in the entire game. I've seen a few, but this seems like the most accurate. And if you know why it's called the ventilation error build, kudos to you. The add-on you want to combine this with is streamers mostly, but you can combo it with really anything. Streamers just makes the most sense. It does save you that 0.4 seconds, so it can make the difference when coming through the door. Another good combo with Iridescent Remnant is Bonnie's Guitar, because it lets you know which gen to go to when you're running it in a build like the Hex build or the build I just mentioned with the ventilation error. Is it basically gives you a pseudo lethal pursuer without having to run it, which can be very, very helpful. But in general, Iridescent Remnant is not one I highly recommend, but it is a different playstyle, and I think it does fit the moniker of an iridescent. There are some changes I would like to it. Either A, give it a longer time, maybe 15 seconds rather than 12, or B, make it so it doesn't activate until you are fully through the door. One of the two, and I think this add-on is perfectly fine. I don't think it would be too oppressive. It has plenty of counterplay, mostly because it's only on upright pallets, so Springtrap is doing this in areas that he hasn't been to yet. So there's things like that. Plus, it's interesting that we found a combination with it that worked out so well. I keep saying this about a lot of Springtrap's add-ons, but the fact that they are so unique in the sense that you can build something around it and make it work in a unique way from every other killer is something I love about add-ons in general, and something that's not as common as you would think on some other killers. But Springtrap fits the bill with almost every single one of his add-ons, apart from the boring ones, which are mostly just number tweaks that kind of still have their use cases of buffing the other add-ons. Unless, of course, your office phone. Then you're just the worst thing on the planet and should be changed to the end of time. Office phone is bad. Strong and unreliable. In fact, I'd probably put it down here and strong and unreliable. Right at the precipice. It's not weak. Iridescent Remnant, by its very definition, cannot be considered weak. It blocks pallets. Blocks upright pallets. It does the same thing Blood Favor does. The problem with Iridescent Remnant is, 1, unless you're running a particular build, or 2, you don't know where to take it, so it doesn't matter. 2, what if the pallets are already down? 3, the time doesn't last long enough for you to really do much on it unless, again, you are pre-planning around it. And 3, it makes it so the 4, it makes it so the survivors know you're coming even more so than they already do. Now, the pre-running doesn't really matter too much because it is 32 meters, but if there's a window there, the pallets don't matter. That's why the build I run Remnant in has cruel limits, because that stops the windows as well. And also, if there's no pallets, then this isn't doing anything for you anyways. It's a very one-trick pony gimmick add-on, but I don't think it's necessarily weak, because when it does work, it gets you hits you would have never gotten otherwise. And if you run it with something like Blood Favor, you're doubling down on the pallets not being able to be used. So you would be surprised. I don't think, again, I can sit here and call it weak. Unreliable, maybe, but not weak. Badge. Alright, time to talk about Security Badge. This is an add-on that there's not really too much to say, but what does it do? It increases the undetectability when you exit a door by 25%. Now, this is 25% of the max, not the total. So if you're running something like Bonnie's guitar strings, it will still give you a bonus 25% of the 20 seconds you normally get when you come out of the door, which equals out to plus 5 seconds. So if you're running Bonnie's guitar strings, you still get 5 seconds of undetectable when you exit a door. When you're not running Bonnie's, you increase your undetectability from 20 seconds to 25 seconds. So, is this worth running? Kind of. Those 5 seconds can matter sometimes, especially with Springtrap being quieter than he was after the most recent bug fix. But in general, you're just better off running other things, and if you really want to stay undetectable, just run perks that allow you to do it, and run a more powerful add-on, if I'm honest with you. Again, there are some things you can do with this, but nothing like flashy or anything. The extra 5 seconds can matter, but a lot of the times you can just go back into a door and re-proc it. If you're running Bonnie's, I wouldn't even recommend running badge with it. I would recommend running pretty much anything, like menu or bib or party hat or access panel. Like, there are so many other things you can run with it that would give you more value in the long run. Even something like Purple Guy Drawn. Which isn't Springtrap's greatest add-on, but, you know, it has its use cases. But in general, give Badge a try, see if you like it. It's a quality of life thing. If you enjoy the undetectable side of Springtrap, it's worth running. If you're not really the biggest fan of it or can deal with the 20 seconds, yeah, go for it. Why not? Probably right there with, yeah, I'd probably put it right at the top of consistent but weak. It's not weak necessarily. The 5 seconds can matter, but it's not good. It's not that great. It is cool that you can combo with Bonnie's and get those 5 seconds of undetectable, but it's not good. It's not good. It is consistent, though. It always gives you those 5 seconds. And again, the problem is just being able to go through those doors. Chica's Bib. Chica's Bib is an add-on that when many first saw it, and even now, is often overlooked. The biggest reason for this is that it requires you to miss. Foxy's hook took the spotlight more, and Vigil exists.
Whoa, I think I just figured something out, Beavis.
What?
This sucks.
Yeah, it really sucks.
And the effect really only seemed to be good to counter head-on. However, after using it for a bit, I have to say that we were all a bit wrong about it, as it has quickly ended up in my rotation of add-ons when I play Springtrap, to the point to where it's probably one of my favorite add-ons on him now. So what does it do exactly? Whenever a survivor is in the area of a missed axe, they are inflicted with the exhaustion status effect for 5 seconds. It then lingers for 5 seconds once they leave the area of the axe. So basically they get hit with the axe, they're in the bubble, and once they leave the bubble, the effect lingers for 5 seconds. So if you don't land a hit, anyone who goes outside of the bubble gets exhaustion for a bit. I want to switch things up before I go into how to use it by highlighting all the exhaustion perks and if this add-on is effective at stopping them. Sprint Burst. Not really, and honestly, with the exception of Mindbreaker or Fearmonger or whatever you want to call it, nothing can really stop Sprint Burst. But I will get more into that once we get into the perk combos. Lithe. If you know someone has Lithe, in many situations, throwing the axe near them to exhaust them can stop any plans they had of making it to a new loop, even if they were to get hit. This right here will be an example of using it. So I know the Nick has Lithe because I saw him use it earlier in the match, and I know Hatch is on my left, so I know if he takes the window, then he's going to be able to run straight to Hatch. There's not really much I can do to stop him, but because I knew he had it, I, instead of taking the free hit from the axe, giving him the Lithe and the normal speed boost, I just throw it at my feet, get him exhausted, so once he goes through the window for the vault, he doesn't get his Lithe proc. Bounce landing. Similar to Lithe, if a survivor is taking you to a high drop location, it might be best to throw the axe near them to stop any balanced landing plans. Dramaturgy. Similar to Sprint Burst, this is often used at the start of a chase rather than during it, and it's hard to predict its use. And it would be better to try and land the axe than to get bib value, as them being injured means they also can't use Dramaturgy. Head on. The perk that was seen as the main add-on's thing to counter, if someone hops into a locker, not only does this stop the head-on, but you also get KI to tell you if they were in the locker in the first place. Oh, you're in the locker. Hello. Value! So it can be used very well in situations like that. Overcome. If you know you can land an M1 and know this perk is in play, it's best to miss and then go for the M1, stopping the extra distance, as genetic limits, another perk I'll talk about later, doesn't take priority over this perk and they still get the distance from it. Background player. Much like Sprint Burst, there is no real way to stop this from being in play, even with other perks other than Langland in some situations, but even then it's usually on cooldown. Dead Hard. Honestly, a perk that has been brought more as time goes on, and one that Springtrap can struggle against with the telegraphed attack that he has, and with it being able to stop grab attacks as well. But missing an axe with bib means it's no longer a factor for you to bother with. Iron Will. Not really a big deal, but yes, this will stop, and it can stop it and make tracking much easier if need be. Smash Hit. Which is becoming more common for some reason. I'm not fully sure why, but it's becoming much more common. And while yes, you can stop this from being stunned, it's often still a punishment, and Springtrap will be better off to just hit the X during the locked animation. While some are rarely affected by bib, the more common ones are, with one exception. Sprint Burst is extremely common and doesn't really have a way to be countered, but a perk that can help with the combo, and combos well with Springtrap in general, is Mindbreaker, as it can help you deal with it, and bib can help reset the timer so the survivor can't just walk to stop the timer. On top of that, Mindbreaker is very good on Springtrap because the blindness status effect for some reason makes it so he can't be revealed when he's in a cam. We don't know why this is, and part of me thinks it's a bug, but we'll see. Before the perk combos, let's just talk about the add-on on its own, and the effect, while situational, is a situation that is common enough to be useful in most matches. While the issues of you not really knowing until later in the match, or even during the in-game recap, when you can see what it was that the survivors brought. However, I like to think it is more of an insurance than anything else, and something I would rather have than not, unlike other add-ons. But bib does something else I love in any power design of any games. It gives you options choices that can show situational awareness. And similar to Foxy's hook, it adds a different dimension to the axe, making it a choice, not just something that happens, but also means missing in general isn't always the worst thing to happen and can still punish the survivor for not being hit. In a chase, throwing the axe down to deny a Lithe or even a last-second dead hard can be the difference in not only that chase going faster, but in turn winning the match. There have been many matches you probably lost in your head because an exhaustion perk went off, from dead hard to balanced landing to even Lithe, because the survivor was able to get extra distance from it, thus making the chase last longer, even if it was only a couple seconds. That could be the difference between a gen popping and a gen not popping. So, about combos, first thought might be to stack it with other exhaustion perks. And while not the worst idea, I don't recommend this, as the game is too fast and I have at least one slowdown in your perks. But some it does combo with better are Mindbreaker. This perk can help with Sprint Burst, as stated before, and in general, give some leeway to other perks that even it can't counter. Genetic limits. Other than Overcome, genetic can be a real insurance policy, as hit or miss, the survivor is exhausted. Did they dodge? Or did you miss?
Burnett, I swear to God.
Stopping Lithe and dead hard, and if they are running Vigil, resetting the timer, as genetic limits is 8 seconds on top of the 5 from Chica's bib. Overwhelming Presence. This perk was recently reworked and while it's too soon to see its full usefulness, the idea of getting aura reading on an axe miss is not one that should be overlooked. Overwhelming Presence is also really not recommended in my opinion, as if you know where they are in the chase, plus you get the KI, but it can be useful, and if you combo it with something like Languid along with Chica's Bib, the information is always there. Restaurant Menu is a very good combo, and one of Springtrap's best add-ons, honestly, to the point where I think half of it should be base kit. But it gives you less time between axe throws, and if done correctly, makes even Vigil almost useless in countering it, as the timer starts once they leave the bubble, and it takes about a second, plus the 5 seconds it's active. The other one is Party Hat, as the bigger AoE can make an unavoidable debuff, as well as making it last longer, as the bubble takes longer to leave. But honestly, it works well enough on its own. You can run it with mostly any add-on to either help you with when you do land an axe, such as Celebrate Poster, or Curtin, or even something like Faz Coin, or something like Bonnie's, just to complete the entire kit and make it so going through doors is also helps. Is this add-on a super OP gem, like I said in the intro? Probably not, but it's one that I think people should give another shot. Similar to Poster, I think it was overlooked because other things were just better, which is part of the reason I think Bonnie's needed to be nerfed, because it was so good, the other add-ons were seeing virtually no use, even though they're just fine.
Why you boring me? I'm right.
But I will say Bib is one of those add-ons, similar to a couple others, that is just like, there's so many matches where I'm like, man, I wish I had Bib right now. I do this often with Foxy's Hook, as well as Faz Coin, and even, to a degree, Bonnie's Guitar Strings. It's an add-on that, again, completes his kit and gives him some usefulness in certain situations. I highly, highly, highly recommend giving it a try if you haven't. And remember that your objective isn't necessarily to miss unless you feel they have an exhaustion perk. I'm going to put Chica's Bib right on the line with Greasy Plate, and the reason why, Chica's Bib can be game-changing. This add-on has won me matches. However, it has also lost, well, I don't want to say lost me matches, but it's also been really useless in some of my matches. And it's not because I'm not using it, it's because Sprint Burst exists. And that's the biggest issue Chica's Bib has, honestly, is just Sprint Burst existing. But when it does work, I mean, denying an exhaustion perk is never a bad thing. But, again, you also have to miss on purpose, and a lot of times it would have been better to just hit it. And it's also hard to determine this, because if we're not taking genetic limits into account here, and I'm trying to not take perks into account, that's why I put Remnant over there on the unreliable side. Because if I was taking my Remnant build into account, it would probably be more on the consistent side. But the fact that I'm not doing that means I kind of have to put Chica's Bib on unreliable right in the middle. It is this add-on literally depends on the survivors. There is nothing to be gained from exhausting them if they don't have something to be exhausted. If the survivor is running Sprint Burst, they're already exhausted. If they're running Overcome, then this add-on might be game-changing. If you exhaust them before they get to use their life, game-changing. If they have Dead Hard, game-changing. But again, a lot of those things rely on the survivors bringing those particular perks, if they're not just bringing Sprint Burst. And if they have Vigil, it also doesn't really matter too much. It's only 5 seconds. Endo Cpu. Alright, let's talk about Endo Cpu, which is a purple add-on for Springtrap that makes it so that whenever you enter your bubble from your axe, you get the benefit of increased action speed of 40% for damaging and breaking objects for 5 seconds. The 5 seconds doesn't happen until you leave the bubble, and the 40% is just there once the animation starts. Now, a few things to note with this is that 40% increased action speed on this is actually kind of nuts when you really think about it. Brutal Strength is only 20%. Fire Up would need almost all of its stacks to reach this amount. The only thing I can even find that's faster than this, and you guys can correct me on this, is the Wraith add-on that does a very similar thing when he's cloaked, and that goes to 60%. So this add-on is definitely one of Springtrap's best add-ons. Probably top 3 or 4, if I'm perfectly honest with you guys. And I really didn't think about it too much because I don't run it personally, but this add-on allows Springtrap to basically ignore one of his biggest counters, which is how some loops he just can't play properly. And the fact that he's 110, it just makes a lot of loops irrelevant for the survivors to use. You can dead zone them with it, and while you can't, you know, break the pallet and rush them like the other dash killers can, it can still be very useful to put survivors in a position where they're almost guaranteed to land a hit. Now, it should be mentioned at the making of this video, the new patch hasn't dropped where more pallets are being placed on the map, so I don't know how it's going to affect that. But in the current state of the game, it is very good. This also works on generators and breakable walls. Breakable walls is not that big of a deal, but generators, you can also use this comboed with Pop Goes the Weasel and things like that. So even then, it can have its uses. Now, before we get into some other aspects of it, I do want to talk about combos with this. So, I did mention Brutal Strength and Fire Up. In general, I don't think it's worth comboing them. Yes, it is an insane amount of break speed, and you can break the pallet in like 0.7 seconds. And I'm going to have that on screen here, showing the difference in like what it is base with Brutal and with Fire Up. But it really doesn't matter too much. 40% is fast enough on its own that it's perfectly fine. The problem with Endo Cpu is trying to use it correctly, because worst case scenario is that you're landing your axes, and you never get the Endo CPU effect. Now, the thing with this is if you're landing your axes, you're probably winning, so it doesn't matter too much. Or you're holding your axe too much, and then you're also probably losing or not playing Springtrap properly. But the thing with that is Endo CPU gives you options at a lot of loops. You can throw it down on the correct side, run the survivor around it, and it doesn't buff them. Much like Chica's bib, which is a downside that only survivors experience, this is an upside only you experience. It has no effect on the survivor when they go through it, unlike Foxy's hook, which can backfire in your face or even celebrate posters. Much as I love that add-on, even I understand that it can backfire. And probably one of the best things to combo this with, outside of the obvious, which is menu, because it lets you throw the axe down with less punishment so you can just pick it back up when you need to, is Party Hat. And the reason for Party Hat is because you can put it anywhere in a loop virtually and get the effect at any point. You don't have to be as precise with where you aim this to get the effect. Which leads me into some other little cool things you can do with it. Some people know this, but if you throw the axe directly in the pallet, once you kick it, you'll get your axe back immediately. Now, there is still a cooldown period, but you can basically get it back as soon as you break it, especially if you waste the survivor's time a little bit and then get a throw off immediately. Comboing this with something like Thwack can also give you aura readings so you know exactly where the survivor is going after this. Something I wouldn't combo this with is Knockout. Not a very popular perk or one that's talked about much, but because you're breaking the pallet so fast, the hinder actually doesn't apply. Another combo that I'm not the biggest fan of, but one you can definitely do, is Blood Favor or Iridescent Remnant to stop the pallet from being dropped in the first place. And then if you run out of time on those somehow, this is a good fallback for that. Not something I highly recommend, but it can definitely be good for that. But Endo Cpu is also very notable because it helps Springtrap on a lot of the maps he suffers on, which I'm going to name this map and 90% of the cast suffers on it, but Gideon's Meat Plat I think is the prime example here. Springtrap really can't do too much. There are some cool hits you can get on Gideon's, don't get me wrong. These are definitely possible. But for the most part, it's a pretty linear map that he can't do too much on. He's too telegraphed. The loops make it so he can't really mind game too well. So having Endo Cpu so you can just bulldoze through all the pallets is very useful. The other thing with Endo Cpu, as I mentioned earlier, is the survivor doesn't get buffed. So a lot of times you can still just use it like normal and happen to get the buff for the 5 seconds linger, just then to get the pallet break and maybe get a hit off of that. So unlike Foxy's hook, you don't really have to think about it too much. And unlike something like Chica's bib, you don't have to miss on purpose. Yes, you do to get the effect, but Chica's bib has the problem of if there was a situation where it would have been better to miss, you want to miss. With Endo Cpu, there's often not too many situations where it would have been better to miss. Because if they get hit with the axe, you get an interstate, and then you can just break the pallet while they're running away. So in general, it's just better in a lot of those situations. But other than that, it's a pretty rudimentary add-on, and just much like a lot of the good add-ons in the game, it just works. It has a lot of good strengths, not too many weaknesses, and just overall, I understand why people really like this add-on, and why people hate some of the other add-ons.
That was the worst
add-on
ever. Of all time.
And it just again, it culminates in an add-on that doesn't really necessarily overshadow his other ones, because unlike something like Bonnie's, where people do have a problem with it, with the undetectability leaving, which is not something I really thought too much about, but Bonnie's in general is very, very powerful. CPU isn't so strong that it overshadows some of his other ones. It's actually one that I didn't realize how much people enjoy it. So we'll definitely see how this goes in the future. And with its buff that it got, it's much better than it ever could have been, and in general has some funny quirks to it. Also, you can run with something like Hubris, something like Enduring, so you can get the pallet break as fast as possible. So the 40% is even more punishing for the survivors. And again, a lot of times what survivors will do is they will wait until you throw your axe to drop the pallet. So you can throw the axe at the pallet before it's dropped, And then once they drop it, then you get the 40% break speed, and then the loop doesn't mean anything. The only thing you got to worry about at that point is the window. And Springtrap often brings Bamboozle, a perk that when we get to the video, I will mention it, but it's basically required on this killer if you want to play him in any significant way against any competent survivors. Believe me, I know I sound like preachy with that, but it's true. Probably up here. In fact, I think the trifecta of add-ons should probably just go right beside each other. It's strong and consistent. Like, if you bring Endo Cpu into a match and you're not getting value out of it, you're going out of your way not to get value out of it. There are some palettes Springtrap can't play. There are some loops Springtrap can't play. And when you learn what those loops are, and which palettes those are, Endo Cpu is one of your biggest lifesavers to making sure. And it's just... It's incredibly strong. It does its job at all times. Again, it's the same problem Menu has, right? And that's the one argument you can make for it not being reliable, is what if you're landing all of your axes? Well, then you're winning the match anyways. Who cares? The only time this add-on is, like, not consistent or strong is when you're already winning a match. And it's probably one of my favorite add-ons for him that's not just boring restaurant menu. Pizza. Next we have the Rotten Pizza. Again, it's not great, but it's also not terrible. This increases the Killer Instinct from the Fire Axe bubble by 100%. So the Fire Axe bubble is, Killer Instinct is 2 seconds. With this, it goes up to 4. Comboing this with something like Chica's Bib or even Party Hat, you can use the Killer Instinct in very interesting ways. A good combo you can do with this is actually Insidious, ever since it got buffed. You can throw this around the corner of a loop where the survivors can't see you, go undetectable, and you'll know if they're moving because of the Killer Instinct leading them towards you. Here's a good moment of the Killer Instinct actually working in my favor. Without it, I might have thought she went back into the room and might have doubled back, but because I had it, I had the info to know exactly where she was. Down still took a second, but we got it because of it. Where was this earlier, Sable? In general, though, unless you're running a build specifically around missing the axe, this is not something you want to go into. But again, it is not a bad effect on its own. If this is something you want to lean into with Springtrap using the axe for the info, it can be very, very useful in that sense. That's the other thing I say all the time about all the Springtrap's add-on, with the exception of the one...
You can't sit with us!
Who won't be named, but yeah. How many jokes can I make about the office phone just being bad and how much I hate it? Anyways, yeah, pizza isn't bad. It's just, again, it's a niche thing, but it has a purpose and a use, which... This is a hard one to determine. I'm gonna put it, like, right here. Probably a little lower. The KI, the Killer Instinct that pizza gives you is great. It really is. Extra 2 seconds is great. It's 4 seconds of undetectable once they leave the bubble. There's a few problems with it. One, if they walk around the bubble, which you'd be surprised how many people do that. And the bigger problem this has is the same problem Access Panel has, but it's for Party Hat. Party Hat does Pizza's job just better. Because in fact, it does it like way better. Pizza extends the Killer Instinct by 100%. But Party Hat extends the bubble by 250%, which basically makes the Killer Instinct last for 250% longer. In essence, it's not exactly the same, but I hope you understand what I'm saying with the math there. So yeah, Pizza's just... It's probably his worst brown add-on, honestly speaking, which isn't saying much. I mean, it's a brown. It does what it's supposed to do. But, like, again, people can dodge it decently well, so, like, I kind of have to put it there, I feel. And to those listening on the YouTube side of things, I'm sure that some of my logic is inconsistent and probably, I don't want to say hypocritical, but probably, like, counteracting itself a little bit. Don't look into it too deeply. A lot of these placements are where they are because I genuinely think, like, this is the strong stuff, this is the weak stuff, and that's really... the big things you have to worry about. The stuff in the middle here is just You just need to think about it a little bit more, that's all. Party Hat is probably the second hardest to determine. Alright, the next support add-on for Springtrap we have is the Party Hat. Party Hat is a very interesting add-on, and what this does is basically it increases the area of effect of the axe, but makes it so it lasts for less time. However, I do want to get a little bit into the numbers because a lot of people don't talk about it too much. The base duration of the axe is 15 seconds. Party Hat, it goes down to 12 seconds. The base range is 2 meters. With Party Hat, it goes up to 7 meters, and the base time it takes to expand is 0.5 seconds. With Party Hat, it goes up to 3 seconds to fully expand. Party Hat is a good add-on to basically complement a lot of the other area of effect add-ons, such as Chica's Bib, Foxy's Hook, Endo Cpu. And it can allow for bigger areas to not only allow for better placement, such as throwing something really high so someone can't get the Foxy's Hook advantages, but it can also just allow it so you don't have to be as precise with it, and can lead to some mind games. So honestly, I highly recommend giving Party Hat a try. Some other things you can do with it is with the access panel, throw it through a door, and if no one was within the 4 meters, but was just shy of it, Party Hat will give you the information with the Killer Instinct after throwing it through the door. Not nearly as reliable, but it is definitely an option. Again, give Party Hat a try. And the reason why is because I need to ask myself, am I looking at Party Hat on its own, or am I looking at it in combination with other things? Because if it's in combination with like Endo Cpu, it's probably up here. But if it's not with Endo Cpu or Foxy's Hook or anything like that, it's probably a little farther down here. It's not weak, it's not unreliable. So it's not in any of these quadrants, but where in this sector it is really depends on that. But on its own, I think it's probably right beside Faz Coin. This add-on always does its job. Always does its job that you need it to do. And it makes missing not as punishing, at least in the sense of you get information, so you know where to go and what to do. So I don't think it's bad in that sense. The reason why it's not as strong as the other add-ons is because its immediate value isn't apparent. The Killer Instinct is nice, but sometimes there's not really much you can do with it. It's the same problem that Purple Guy Drawing has. But at the same time, it's always doing the job it needs to do. And if you throw in the combos it has with Chica's Bib, CPU, and Foxy's Hook, it's probably up here. But on its own, I kind of had to put it here. It's the same thing with the access panel. If you were comboing this with, again, Party Hat, or also Party Hat's combo with access panel as well. With Party Hat or Faz Coin, it'd probably be a little higher, or a little over here on the right of the consistency side, because that kind of makes up for its inconsistency. You get to use its gimmick a little bit more, but still, yeah. Foxy's Hook! Foxy's Hook, the obligatory haste add-on that a lot of killers seem to have at least one of. And it's had a few different versions, going from what some would call OP to not that great, to now in a state where I would say it's decent and honestly just good without being too oppressive. Its current version grants anyone who's in the Axis bubble 7% haste for 6 seconds. This includes the survivors, bringing them to 107% movement speed, and Springtrap to 122% movement speed as he becomes 115 after he throws the axe. A few points of note are that the effect doesn't start its timer until you leave the bubble, similar to a clown bottle, which means Party Hat basically makes it last longer, as well as having other uses with it that I'll get into a little bit later. Before we get into its more niche uses, I want to get into its general use case. On the PTB, as stated, a lot of people thought this add-on was OP, and while I kind of disagree to an extent, I understand where they were coming from. In essence, Foxy's Hook is just a mini clown yellow bottle for Springtrap. He throws his axe wherever he needs to, he walks through the bubble, he gets movement speed. The one downside to this is that unlike clown, you're trying to hit your axe on the survivor, so many times you will throw it towards the survivor, miss, and they will get the haste. Now, the thing with this is that if it's in a specific loop that you're currently with the survivor in, it doesn't really matter too much. You're both getting the 7% haste, and technically speaking, you'll end the haste after they do, and have it for like a couple seconds a little longer. But for the most part, the reason why a lot of people don't like this add-on is because it encourages Springtrap to miss. Now, I disagree with this, because I think that's fundamentally part of Springtrap's entire design is that sometimes you do want to miss, maybe for the Killer Instinct proc, maybe for the haste from Foxy's hook, maybe from Chica's bib, things like that. But I really don't think it's really that badly designed, as Springtrap can also use this to his advantage in other ways, but for the most part, it just speeds up most of your chases by 7% in general, which, when I was talking about Celebrate Poster, was one of the things I enjoyed about that. The difference with this is that, one, it requires you to miss, and two, you have much more control over when it happens, and if used correctly, only you end up with the benefit. And that's where I think the skill expression comes from this. The one thing I'm not the biggest fan of with this add-on is that it kind of discourages you to go for orbitals. Because if you go for an orbital and miss, which it's an orbital, you're probably going to miss, it means that the survivor gets 7% haste and can just run away. That is the other thing with this. It also discourages you from using it at locked animation locations, such as windows and pallets, because if you do manage to miss them somehow or miscalculate, the survivor is going to get the haste, and then you're basically sitting there kicking the pallet, getting the haste afterwards. But in both of those scenarios, again, you're both getting the 7% haste, so you're catching up just as fast as you would have. Another cool thing you can do with this that I do often is you can throw it at a loop while you're in the loop, and once those 7 seconds are up and the survivor's about to cross up through the bubble after you just recently have, maybe you double back or something like that, you can then recall the axe, get the 7% haste, and now you're 117%. So you're back up to 115. Now, before I go into some other niche techs, I do want to go into combos, because I always like talking about combinations with this, and one that I neglected to talk about in the Endo Cpu video was Endo Cpu.
Oh, that's good. I keep having this nagging feeling that I've forgotten something.
Hey, if you forgot it, it probably wasn't all that important.
Yeah, I guess.
Endo Cpu makes it so that when you're in your bubble, and for 5 seconds after, you kick things 40% faster. Comboing this with Foxy's hook, you kick the pallet 40% faster and get the 7% haste as you're running towards the survivor once this happens. It requires a little bit more setup, but in general, you can often use this in a way to catch up to the survivor extremely fast. If you combo this with something like Game of Foot and you happen to be chasing the Obsession, you also get another 7% haste. And it's kind of nuts how much haste stacking you can end up doing with this. Now, what I do want to mention about haste stacking is that there aren't very many haste perks as you would think, especially on the killer side. There's like 3 viable ones and then a bunch of niche ones. And even the viable ones, such as Unbound, require you to land the hit. So unless you preset the axe up in such a way where you're going to get the hit and then you vault through the window anyways. And the other obvious combo is with Party Hat, like I mentioned earlier, since it makes the bubble bigger. It also means that you essentially get the haste for longer. The problem with Party Hat is that oftentimes it means that the survivor is also getting the haste. So you kind of make this zone where everyone is 7% faster. This can be a negative and a positive depending on the loop, depending on the situation. I do want to get a little bit later into the idea of how to run this at something like Shack, and how I've mentioned in the past that Springtrap is more of an M1 killer who happens to M2, and Foxy's hook kind of plays into that, which leads us into Save the Best for Last. Decent combo with this, as if you're not really landing your axe, then why not just go for an M1 build? Springtrap is definitely capable of it, and he can get around the map, so it's not the worst idea in the world. You can combo this with Rapid Brutality, which I actually would recommend, as you're throwing your axe so often, you're not getting the Bloodlust anyways. So you might as well do it. Restaurant Menu is an obvious one, as that means that you can get the axe back faster, essentially keep the haste more often. It should be noted that unlike Iridescent Coin, it doesn't last indefinitely. The timer doesn't line up, even with Restaurant Menu. So just keep that in mind. If they upped it to 7 or 8 seconds, it definitely would, but even then you have the recall time. It's really not worth buffing it in that way. The last combo is with Celebrate Poster, and the reason why I enjoyed comboing it with Celebrate Poster is that it means that hit or miss, you're getting the haste. Now, the survivor is getting the haste as well, but again, if you're throwing your axe at the survivor, there's a very high likely chance that they pick up the bubble and then keep going with the haste anyways. So it doesn't really matter too much. But if you like the haste or the fast feeling of it, I definitely recommend running these two together. Now, the general playstyle of Foxy's hook, as stated before, is just to kind of throw your axe at your feet or slightly in front of you, similar to a yellow clown bottle. Use the haste to catch up to the survivor. You have to be very careful not to give it to the survivor, which there is a tech that allows you to not give it to the survivor. I call it the party trick because it requires Party Hat, but some people would call it height maxing because you're throwing the axe at a very high location, such as a wall or a tree, to where the bubble is big enough so it still touches Springtrap's head and he gets the effect, versus the survivor not getting the haste thing.
Well, nope, I hit the pig. Wait, hold on. Yeah, are you affected by this? Can you run through that? Did you get haste? No, you didn't. Wait, that's so good.
Now, is this viable? Kind of. Is it useful? Most definitely. Is it practical? That's the real question, and the problem with it is the practicality. Not only do you have to be at a loop that specifically has something for you to throw the axe above you to get this effect to happen, you also have to know exactly where to aim it, how far away to be to aim it, all of these other things, which you can get good with in practice. And while I do recommend, learning a couple of them, I think a lot of indoor maps are very good for this if you happen to have Foxy's Hook on them. The maps that in general just have too many variables to make this a viable strategy to learn. I'm not saying don't go for it, but it is definitely something you can do. Something else that should be noted is that the 6 seconds that you get the haste, because of how it works, if you throw an axe at the bottom of a door, not at the door, but at the bottom of the door on the ground, when you go through the door and then come out the other side, you'll still retain some of the haste for about 2 to 3 seconds, depending on whether you're running streamers or not. What's really nice about this is it means that you can basically throw the axe at the floor, wait in the door, use something like Bonnie's guitar, and then once you get out of the door, you can then use that haste to your advantage in whatever way you feel fit. Another thing, and I brought out spring spots before, and something with this is that spring spots are interesting. Standing still mind games are always interesting to me. Some people fall for it, some people don't. The argument would ought to be made that good survivors don't fall for it because they'll hold their check spots. However, what I've learned in my about 2.5 years of doing standstill tech is that a lot of survivors, if they have a speed buff of any kind, will not stand still because they're trying to utilize the speed buff as best they can to get that distance. So a lot of times you can use Foxy's Hook with the Killer Instinct proc from it to know if the survivor's running back into you at an even faster rate. Now, am I saying do this all the time? Of course not. Like I always say, if you're doing spring spotting, chuck spotting, head spotting for the new killer, you need to always vet the survivor and see if it's working and stop when it's not. Get spring spotted, Vittoria. Hello. Good bed hug. Bro, how many spring spots have I gotten in this match? Holy crap. Really, Steve? Really, Steve? Really, Steve? And he DC'd! But that's the other thing with Foxy's Hook that I do want to bring up, is that it does allow you to brute force a lot of things. I mentioned a minute ago that Springtrap, in my opinion, is more of an M1 killer who happens to M2, not an M2 killer who happens to M1. Now, what is the difference? I hear you probably asking. Maybe not. Who knows? The difference is that while the axe is extremely important and a core part of Springtrap's kit, landing it is not always the easiest, especially on a lot of loops. Cough, cough, shack. But a lot of the time, because of that, that's why Foxy's Hook is very, very good. Because you can basically brute force any loop 7% faster. I brought this up a few times, and that's because I feel it's very important to utilizing Foxy's Hook to the best of its ability. You can throw it at the corner of shack, so both of you end up getting it, so the vault block happens faster. You can throw it at the window, so it just happens inherently faster. But again, it basically turns you into more of a run-down character. And if you combo it with CPU, like mentioned before, you can then combo this to basically become like a pseudo-singularity, not exactly, where you're rushing the survivors down at faster speeds and then breaking the pallet. It doesn't feel like Springtrap necessarily because you're playing him in a completely different way, but in my opinion, I think it's a much better way to do it. And again, something that I feel like an add-on should do is change how the playstyle works, especially a blue rarity one. It'd be weird if there was also a green rarity one that doesn't really add anything to the gameplay of any sense, and it's just kind of there to do what it does.
Calm down! Don't you tell me to calm down. There's that chirping again. How are you not hearing that? Newsflash, asshole! I've been hearing it the entire goddamn time! Then why wouldn't you say something? Because I hate you! Oh.
Now, is Foxy's Hook the super amazing OP add-on? This is a weird case, because unlike some other ones, it really does depend on you. If you think that you're not very good at landing your axes, I would recommend learning, but if you think you're not very good at landing your axes, or you're not seeing much use in the axe like on its own, I highly, highly, highly recommend Foxy's Hook. It is definitely in, I would say, in his top 5. There's a reason for this. Again, the utility it provides is universally good. Even if it works on the survivor, as long as you're not dumb about it, you can make use out of this yourself as well. And unlike some other add-ons like Chica's Bib or Iridescent Remnant or Freddy's Hat, it's not extremely situational. There aren't very many matches where you're kind of hurting yourself by bringing this, or it's only good in this specific situation. And on top of that, much like a lot of his add-ons, you can kind of build around it. You can add another haste effect in there. You can do aura reading, like I'm all ears, so you can use the haste to like kind of sneak up on people around corners. You can use it with discordance. You can use it for general map traversal. You can use it for going through doors. Foxy's Hook has a lot of utility, and I don't think it really needs to be adjusted. I think the last adjustment they did to it was perfectly fine. It gives it synergies with the doors. It makes it so that the haste isn't too unnoticeable, and it helps it combo with many other things, like I mentioned earlier, CPU and Party Hat. This one's hard. Foxy's Hook just depends. This is such a dependent add-on on so many factors. Again, I kind of want to put it... Yeah, I'm probably going to put it right there. Up at... Probably a little lower, actually. I think Foxy's Hook gets a little overrated for what it can do. It has a lot of potential. It has a lot of potential. The 7% haste can really affect your M1, but at the same time, in a lot of situations, it would have been better just to hit the survivor with the axe. But if you know you can't, Foxy's Hook is a great way to circumvent that. The problem it has is you can also give the survivors the haste, and depending on the situation, sometimes you'll only give them the haste. And that's its issue, is the survivor, much like a clown bottle, and unlike a clown bottle where clown kind of wants to, or has the leisure of setting it up in a way to where the survivors can't get the most use out of it, Springtrap really can't do that depending on a lot of situations. Plus, Foxy's Hook means you can't really go for orbitals as much because you don't want to give the survivors the leisure of it, of having the axe without you being there. It also means you can't really go for window shots sometimes because if you miss or like are gone by like a second, it can really mess up the entire plan of hitting them through the window, and now they have the 7% haste. It can backfire, is what I'm saying. But that's not as common as some people like to make it out to be. So I definitely think it's there. Loot Bag. All right, time to talk about the in-game add-on for Springtrap, which is Loot Bag, which basically makes it so that if the survivor has an axe in them, they can't leave, and anyone within a 12-meter range also can't leave, as long as the axe is in that person. This can be very funny, hilarious, and honestly, the determining factor on whether or not you want to use that, I'm just going to show this clip. If that's something you want to be able to do, go for it. You can combo this with any real in-game build, such as Blood Warden and other things like that, obviously. One I wouldn't recommend is do not run this with Terminus. The reason being is that the axe does have to be embedded. If you down the survivor with an axe, they just get to crawl out anyways. And the main way you want to use this is embed the axe into them and grab them so they can't run away. You do not want to M1 them, so you need to be very careful that you get in range and don't accidentally M1 them so they get out. Another difficult one. In-game only, so by that very logic, it's already unreliable. And you're down an add-on the entire time you're running this. So I think it's probably right above Chica's Bib on the strength side. And I actually think it's farther down on the unreliable side. The problem with Loot Bag, again, is like if you don't make it to in-game, and it has that curse, every time I run it, they never make it to in-game. And even if you do make it to in-game, you have to pray there at the exit gate. And as far as its strength goes, it can basically guarantee a kill and turn a match around. It really can. But on its own, this is taking no other perks into account. This is taking no other add-ons into account. But when it does work, it can be a game changer. But I don't think I can put it too high on the strength side of things. Maybe a little bit higher, probably in the middle. Because the thing is, in an ideal situation, in an ideal 100% situation, even if you down the person who doesn't have the axe, because loot bag works on everyone in the radius, even if you down the person who doesn't have the axe, you still really only have time to get one person, because even if you pick that person up and down the person who has the axe, and then they still get out, because once the axe is out, they can leave. If you grab the person with the axe, the other people can leave too. So this relies a lot on survivor altruism for its full strength to really show. And I think that's part of why I want to put it so far into the unreliable side. But when it does work, it is very, 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 very good. However, again, you are down an add-on the entire time you're running this. And it does kind of need to be built around. That's the problem with rating it also, is that I'm trying to not take Blood Ward into account. I'm trying to not take, like, something like no ed into account with it or anything like that. Also, don't run Terminus with loot bag. I wish people would stop doing that. If they're injured, the axe doesn't work. It doesn't embed because they're injured. But no, that's pretty much, I think, the tier list. And honestly, I think, like I've been saying for months, Springtrap's add-ons are decent. Every single one of them. They all have a purpose, with one exception. And even the ones that are weak and unreliable, there's only, in my mind, really only 2 of them. One of them is because the effect doesn't help you in any way, and it doesn't really do much for you. The other one is because another add-on just does its job better, and the job it does isn't that good anyways. That's the only reason. But every single other one, even on the weaker end of it, Streamers is just weak because of the conditions. Badge is just weak because 5 seconds isn't that much. Streamers is weak because 0.4 seconds isn't that much. Help Wanted is weak just because it's purposely weak. It's a learning tool. It doesn't really actually do anything for you. But other than that, I think this just shows how good Springtrap's add-ons can be. Not to put anyone on the spot, but I did get a comment on I believe it was the Freddy's hat video, of someone saying the problem with Springtrap is that in competitive, most of his add-ons aren't good. And I addressed this in that video. If you guys want to run the best add-ons for Springtrap, and that's all you want to run, and that's it is these 3 right here. This trifecta of add-ons, preferably menu plus one of these 2, and you will be fine. That's all you ever have to run ever again. But looking at it from the more nuanced perspective of when things can be good and when things can be bad, I think is how we need to look at these. Because I also don't think these add-ons need to be nerfed. I think Bonnie's is actually in a good spot now. Problem Bonnie's has is that it just it just invalidates so much. It's so strong it makes everything else look weak. I've said this so many times. And the problem with something like Faz Coin, for example, I don't think Faz Coin needs to be buffed. I think it does what it needs to do, and it's fine. Same with Purple Guy Drawing. I think Purple Guy Drawing is perfectly okay. Foxy's Hook, I think after the changes it's gotten, it's in the best spot it can be without being too strong. Greasy Paper Plate, again, does its job. I think what it's designed to do, it does fairly well. Even Remnant. I think Remnant could use a few tweaks, mostly to the time, but mostly to the time it's activated, or making it only activate once you exit the door. I think if it does those 2 things, it's perfect. Office Phone. Funny thing about Office Phone, if they just added the lingering effect to Office Phone, just made it so the effect lingered for 15 seconds to anyone who enters the radius, I genuinely think it would be like right here next to fucking Security Badge. That's the thing. A lot of these add-ons are like on the precipice of being what I would consider good, decent, reliable. Even Celebrate posters. Celebrate posters is only over here in the unreliable just because of its inconsistencies on, like, maps or the survivor you're playing against. And the fact that depending on what is going on in the match, it might actually lose you a chase. Loot bag is only here because by its very design, it's inconsistent. If you don't get to in-game, this add-on does nothing for you. Even if you do get to in-game, if you miss the axe, or you can't secure that kill for whatever reason, or people body block the person with the axe, then it's not doing much. Access panel is going to be unreliable just because of how doors logic works. Freddy's hat is just too hard to determine because of Freddy's hat. Like, again, it's just, yeah, that's just how it is. But for those on the YouTube side of things, I hope you enjoyed the tier list. And all the other videos going over it. Again, if you disagree, I'm sure a lot of people do. I'm not the fucking end-all be-all of Springtrap knowledge, right? Just because I say it doesn't mean it's correct. These are just thoughts and opinions on my end. But I love you guys. Have a good one. Yeah. Bye.